discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The family of Nicola Bully say she can finally rest as her body is formally identified.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, the devastated family of Nicola Bully have described her as the centre of their world after the mum of two's body was recovered from the River Wire. They're now calling for the press and the public to be held accountable for false accusations.
The Prime Minister will chair Cabinet today amid warnings of government resignations over his Brexit deal. Yesterday, the Home Secretary became the second minister to warn Rishi Sunak against dropping the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill.
American President Joe Biden has pledged a new $500 million military package to Ukraine during a surprise visit to Kyiv ahead of the first anniversary. It comes as former Prime Ministers Liz Truss and Boris Johnson called for jets to be sent to the conflict.
Two new earthquakes have struck Turkey overnight, killing at least 3 people and injuring over 200 others. Tremors of 6.4 and 5.8 magnitude collapsed buildings, with rescuers once again searching for people trapped beneath the rubble.
And today is Shrove Tuesday, so get in touch the usual way you'll celebrate this, if you do celebrate it, with your pancakes on Twitter or email, your recipe, the little extra bit, the little zest of lemon you may add or not, to make it all that little bit different. Would you be flipping pancakes?
I will.
Today?
Do you know, the kids were saying, can we have them for breakfast? Obviously, I'm not there at breakfast time, but actually it makes more sense to me to have pancakes for breakfast, because I'll give them a normal supper, and then they'll be wanting pancakes after that. Well, normally they'd be having fruit, and I'm very strict, so
give them pancakes of fruit.
Good idea.
That's the way to do it. So Uncle Eamonn sorted that one for you as well. So there you are. Get in touch. You know what to do. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News.
So it is our top story this morning. The family of Nicola Bully say she can finally rest after the mum of two's body was recovered from the River Wire.
So in a statement read out by Lancashire Police, the family also said the press and the public have to be held accountable for what they term are false accusations and the vilification of friends and loved ones.
Well, our national reporter Theo Jacumba joins us now live from Lancashire. Good morning to you, Theo. The nation's thoughts very much with the Bully family over the last 24 hours or so, but some strong words from the family yesterday directed at the press and indeed at the public, and also serious questions still for the police.
Good morning. Yes, it's a case that's gripped this community beyond this entire nation and across the world as well. Many people have been seeing what's been happening here in Lancashire and wanting to know what happened over the last couple of weeks on this particular road, Garstang Road, or Blackpool Road as it's also known. We saw community members, family members and close friends who are out here holding posters asking people if they do have any dash cam footage, please do get in touch. And of course, as we heard on Sunday morning, some people saw a body on the body, got in touch with the police. And it was yesterday afternoon, just after 5:30, that the police held a press conference formally identifying Nicola Bully as that body which was found here in Lancashire in the River Wyre. And as you mentioned in your opening introduction, there was some criticism of the press, but of course, many people who have been coming here during that period of time, particularly on the weekends when people were away from work, people would come from all corners of the UK to come and support a community centre just a few yards behind me. People coming to receive maps, to go on a trail just to see if they could see anything, and people really did want to rally around and support Nicola's family, and as well alongside the police's investigation, which was supported by specialist investigators. In terms of what was said in that statement yesterday from the police, they said, sadly, we have been able to identify, to confirm that yesterday, as in Sunday, we recovered Nicola Bully from a River Wyre. And it said Nicola's family have been informed and are, of course, devastated. Our thoughts are with them at this time, as well as their loved ones and the wider community. They also read some of a statement from Nicola's family, which did go on to say, we will never be able to comprehend what Nikki had to go through in her last moments, and that will never leave us. And in that, they did say some of the press were intruding their privacy and were very critical directly to some members of the media as well. As part of that statement, they did go on to say, to those who genuinely helped and supported us privately, we thank you. The community support in St Michael's, friends, neighbours and strangers has been nothing short of comforting and heartwarming. And they said, finally, Nikki, you are no longer a missing person. You have been found and we can let you rest now.
And Theo, the sickening headlines and the stories continue today, and I'm just reading here that when her body was being retrieved from those reeds, there were a number of people filming it to post that on social media. So this is what the family are having to put up with and what is being referred to in the statement that you read.
That's right. And interestingly, the police has been consistent about this over the last few weeks, particularly when I came to cover this story. They were saying, please do refrain from speculation. That goes along with social media. We know these days people have phones. They can post on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, those kind of social media apps. And the police were consistent, asking people to not do that, as it could cause distress towards the family. That has been highlighted over the last few days. And of course, now they have asked for their privacy as they grieve.
OK. Theo Chicumba, thanks very much indeed.
Let's now go to former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley. Peter, good morning to you. And as a detective, you've got a unique perspective on all of this. There will be an argument, though, from a lot of people who are saying, far from telling us to keep our nose out of things, we have helped the police, and you could say, you know, it was an amateur. I don't know how you would describe this guy. He says he's a psychic, and he said his special gift helped him find Nicola's body as well. There obviously is a very thin divide line, Peter, between receiving help from the public and receiving interference.
Yes, indeed. And I've been a stern critic for the last 2 or 3 weeks of much of Lancashire Police's messaging, because I think their press conferences have fallen well short of what they should have been, and how they've got the information out, what they've put out there has been very clumsy, really, really poor. However, they had their working hypothesis that Nicola went into the river. That has proven to be correct, albeit, of course, it wasn't the police that found Nicola. It was these members of the public. The police, when the dust settles They're going to have to take a very long, hard look at how they've conducted all of this, not only the investigation, but very much the communication. And I hope that the wider British police take some lessons from all of this, because, quite frankly, if you get the messaging wrong and people don't believe you, they're not going to trust your investigations. And that, I think, is part of the reason why so many people turned up at St Michael's on Wire.
And there is a huge problem, isn't there, with the British public and trust in the police at the moment. Presumably one of the reasons why there is this pressure growing on the Home Secretary to call for an independent inquiry into what happened in this case. At the moment, the police are effectively marking their own homework. Do you think that is right?
Trust in the police is at catastrophically low levels, and there's many reasons for that. Not only the police officers who have murdered and raped and all the other horrendous wrongdoing that we're hearing about, but if you take yesterday, for example, and the Jake Davidson murderous man that he was, who went on that spree with his firearm down in Plymouth in 2021, and the statement that was released by the families of the victims yesterday was absolutely excoriating in its criticism of the lamentable Devon and Cornwall police, who gave a firearm back to a known man of violence, absolutely beyond the comprehension of any right-thinking person. And during that inquest, evidence was given that senior officers from Devon and Cornwall police kind of colluded to deny any responsibility or liability for their pathetic actions. So that got a lot of publicity yesterday. The Nicola Bully case has got a lot of publicity. We know there are police officers going into court every week for very serious wrongdoing, and clearly policing is in a dreadful state, or much of it is. The police have got to start telling the truth, look at themselves in the mirror. They only ever seem to admit things when they're forced into a corner, and the public know this. They come out with mealy-mouthed words like lessons will be learned, and it appears they never are. So the police have got a lot of work to do if they want to regain the trust and the respect of the British people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will agree with what you had to say this morning, Peter Blexley. Always a pleasure to get your thoughts. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Well, the time is 10 minutes past 6. The Prime Minister will chair a cabinet meeting today amid speculation that ministers could resign over his Brexit deal if it risks Northern Ireland's place within the UK.
Well, yesterday, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, became the second member of Cabinet to warn Rishi Sunak against ditching the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill.
Well, joining us now, we say good morning to Tom Slater. Tom is the editor of political magazine Spiked. Is Rishi Sunak spiked over this one?
Well, he may well be. I mean, this is always an intractable problem for various Tory Prime Ministers. But because there's a very important issue at stake, I think it's very tempting when the Northern Ireland Protocol comes up for people to treat this as a case of the DUP or Tory backbenchers being incredibly outrageous and unreasonable and purist, when what you're really talking about is an arrangement which no other nation would surely accept, insofar as you have part of your sovereign territory being hived off by a foreign power, the European Union, subject to laws that even the people of Northern Ireland have no democratic control over. I think the difficulty is everything that we've heard so far about this renegotiation has been cosmetic. It's been about trying to ameliorate some of the effects of the protocol, but the problem has always been the protocol itself. And whilst we may well see a deal in the coming days, it seems like the contours of it have existed for quite some time now. Whether or not he can ever get it past the people he needs to get it past is unclear because of the fact he's never really, grasped that nettle, I don't think.
We've had 3 months of Rishi Sunak now, who has kept his head down, avoided controversy, focused very much on unity. This is a huge test for him now. He's got 3 former Prime Ministers circling and now 2 members of his cabinet, which he did stuff full of ERGers to try and bring that unity, now publicly sort of telling him what they want to see. Would resignations perhaps change his hand, or is he prepared, do you think, to tough it out?
Well, that's a really difficult thing, because in a sense, Rishi Sunak really trying to grasp the Northern Ireland Protocol bill is a bit out of character. I mean, when he's ever come into any kind of friction with his backbenchers over something that might, again, wreck his authority, wreck his leadership, he's backed down pretty quickly. His priorities don't involve things that are that contentious, at least within his own party. This is the one exception. So I guess the question is, does he think that he has something, a rabbit out of the hat, that might be able to at least save face on the part of these individuals? But I think, the recent years are littered with Tory Prime Ministers thinking that they can do a kind of stitch-up deal with the European Union and get it past the Tory party, get it past the DUP time and again. They've been proven wrong when trying to do so.
On the DUP, is there a possible scenario whereby the Prime Minister decides, look, OK, this doesn't meet all of their criteria or their red lines, but they're not actually going to oppose it, and that might be the best that we can hope for?
Well, I think it depends on what is actually in the deal. I mean, we're talking about a deal that's only being briefed to us, via kind of intermediaries at this point. Maybe there's something more that they're sitting on. But at the same time, in terms of what we've heard about, these are basically kind of cosmetic changes. It doesn't change the fundamental role of EU law in Northern Ireland, doesn't change the fundamental oversight that the European Court of Justice
But it would
has.
address the issues of friction, which have been problematic economically between the two blocks.
Certainly. I think the issue is that when you're talking about the two parties, as it were, that he has to, or the two groups that he has to get this passed, those fundamental issues of principle haven't been addressed. And whilst this can feel like a very technical conversation, at the end of the day, this, as it is with Brexit, is questions of sovereignty, and I don't think you can be a little bit sovereign in that respect. OK. Tom Slater, thank you. Tom's the editor of Spiked. Thank you. Time coming up to 6:15.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. And we've already mentioned them this hour. The two former Prime Ministers, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, have urged Rishi Sunak to send fighter jets to Ukraine. The duo have made the plea in the House of Commons during a debate on Ukraine. But last week, Defence Secretary claimed it could take years before sending any planes to Kyiv.
Around 400,000 women could benefit from cheaper menopause treatment as part of a new scheme to cut prescription costs. The government says women prescribed hormone replacement therapy will be able to get a year's worth of treatment for just under £20. We're going to be talking to Women's Health Minister Maria Caulfield just before 7 o'clock.
Supermarkets are facing a tomato shortage after bad weather in Europe and Africa has disrupted supplies. In Morocco, heavy rain, flooding and cancelled ferries have affected exports for the past 3 to 4 weeks. And in Spain, the winter tomato crop has also been badly affected by poor weather. See, I'm devastated by that.
Why?
Well, we have tomatoes on the kitchen counter and we just eat them like popcorn all through the day. We get through a lot of tomatoes.
Though cherry tomatoes, what's the point?
Oh, full of flavour. Oh, they're so lovely. They're my favourite. I don't like the other types.
No, I think the bigger the better.
Oh, really? Well, if you're on holiday, I like a big buffalo tomato with a bit of mozzarella and whatever else. But the little ones are just great for a little snack, like a grape. Tomatoes
do make such a difference. I mean, there's certain fast food hamburger chains that one of them serves a very big slice of tomato in their burger, and it makes a difference, makes a big difference. I used to grow tomatoes when I was a teenager, It was they're very, very easy. Yeah, so you don't even need a big garden to grow tomatoes. So you could be in a tiny flat and you could do it on your windowsill. Yeah, everyone's got a window, you can grow a tomato. So actually, maybe that's the solution. There's the shortage of tomatoes. Grow your own.
Launch a campaign. Let's grow our own tomatoes.
Way to do it.
Speaking of food and the like, it is, of course, Pancake Day. You don't call it Pancake Day, though. That offends you. What do you call it? Pancake Tuesday?
I've always called it Pancake Tuesday. Shrove Tuesday.
Shrove Tuesday. Well,
I mean, it is. It's like all these things. It's not about pancakes. It's a religious mark in the calendar, isn't it?
Well, it's using up what traditionally was in your larder ahead of going into Lent tomorrow. But the irony is, the cost of eggs and everything else is actually really expensive. People are having to splurge on Pancake Day, which is the opposite intention of it, was to kind of clean out your cupboards.
But it is nicer to make your own than to go to the supermarket and buy whatever's there.
Yes, but I did buy the pre-made mixture. Is that a cheat?
No,
it is a cheat,
no.
You know, busy working.
It's fine.
And what would you have on your pancakes? What's the perfect pancake topping? In fact, I'd love to know what people at home are planning for their pancakes.
Well, you can do savoury or sweet.
Yeah, we actually got some Nutella. Do you like Nutella?
No, I don't. Never tasted them.
You've never had Nutella?
Never. Is it nuts? Is it nuts? Is it chocolate?
What?
No.
Do you not like chocolate?
I don't like chocolate. I wouldn't eat chocolate cake. People do you things like, it's your birthday, I made you chocolate cake. No.
Eamonn, I can't quite get over this. So Nutella is like, I could eat it by the spoon. spoon load.
So is it taste of nuts or chocolate?
Hazelnut chocolate. So it's like the rich, nutty flavour. But, I mean, how do you describe Nutella? You haven't lived. Maybe it's a...
There's so many things I haven't sampled.
I know.
Honestly, I could do your list of all of that. Anyway, we're going to take a break there. When we come back, we're going to talk about where to invest your money. And one of the areas is cars. Older cars. They're called affordable classics. So these could be cars from the 70s or the 80s. They're increasing in value. Would you have a go? Would you take a punt? After this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pearce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 6:20, still to come on the programme this morning.
At 6:45, we're going to be talking to the Government Minister, Maria Caulfield, as the Prime Minister warns his Brexit deal could lead to government resignations.
And 7:45, middle-class pawn shops are on the rise as more people look to sell luxury goods.
Pawn shops.
Stop it. We'll ask a pawnbroker from Guildford about the most unusual items that he's come across, and honestly, the things that he's going to be telling us about, from fighter jets, randomly, I think, was on there.
Well, we could sell those to Ukraine.
A giant pearl. Anyway, we'll find out about that at 7:45, and I'm looking forward to that.
Rich people feel the nip as well.
Yes.
Yeah, OK. So there you are. What have you ever pawned? Let us know. GBViews.
Have you ever been to a pawn shop?
No.
Me neither.
Though one of them that is in our town was on a TV series on Channel 5.
I've watched the series. I do like it. I find it addictive.
It's the tiniest shop in the world.
It's like a kind of antique dealer, but not, if you know what I mean. They kind of know the value of everything. I think they're very interesting people, pawn brokers. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Let us know your thoughts on that and the rest of the day's news. You know what to do.
Look, just overnight, we heard that Turkey has been hit by another 2 deadly tremors, just 2 weeks after the huge earthquake that left 45,000 people dead across Syria and Turkey.
The Turkish Interior Minister has confirmed that 3 people had died and over 200 had been injured, with tremors felt from as far away as Egypt.
OK, let's talk us through the latest developments now. Turkish journalist Melda Dogan. Melda, obviously not the same in terms of fatalities. There have been a few fatalities, but again, you just can't rest. These quakes can happen at any time.
Well, unfortunately, since the big earthquake happened 2 weeks ago, since the big earthquake happened 2 weeks ago, we had been facing several aftershocks, but those were comparatively smaller earthquakes that didn't claim any lives or further damage. But unfortunately, last night we have witnessed an earthquake. I'm not talking about an aftershock, an earthquake of 6.4. Of magnitude of 6.4, which has hit the city of Hatay, and it has been felt throughout the Mediterranean, in the cities and countries that have coast the Mediterranean, and in Turkey's south as well. Talking about the number of fatalities, we know so far that 6 people have lost their lives and 294 have been injured in this latest earthquake. The numbers are thankfully lower here because the major city, the biggest city that was affected by the earthquake, Hatay, has been mostly evacuated. It has actually become a ghost town, I might say. I was here the day before, and the streets were completely empty. Most of the residents living here have left already to other cities and families and friends in other cities, and the rest of the people are living in temporary shelters and in tents. So the buildings were empty. However, we have 3 buildings that have been collapsed, and the reason is that one of the buildings that have collapsed in this latest earthquake is the one that you see behind me. So this building was actually marked as heavy damage in the first earthquake, but the residents decided to go inside and take some of their belongings, and that's when the earthquake hit, and 4 people were trapped inside. 1 of them has been rescued. 3 others have unfortunately lost their lives. Rescue operations have been going on throughout the night. I was here with emergency and rescue workers, watching them trying to save lives all night. Unfortunately, all we have seen here were the bodies of that people being pulled out of the rubble here, unfortunately. Talking about the aftermath of this disaster, actually, this country still has the trauma of the earthquake 2 weeks ago. People still are facing this huge trauma that have left millions homeless overnight, and that's why actually tonight in several cities, not only in Hatay but also in neighboring cities such as Adana and Gaziantep, people rush to the oil stations to get petrol and gas to their cars, and they slept in their cars, or some of them even try to drive to outskirts of the cities or to other regions, safer regions, and aftershocks are still ongoing, unfortunately, in the region, and the trauma is still going on.
OK, Melda, thank you very much for that update. Just unimaginable levels of human tragedy and hardship. We really appreciate it. I just want to update people at home, because in amongst all these terribly sad stories, there has been a wonderful chink of light in all of this. And you might remember a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, obviously, after the earthquake, a little baby was found alive, still attached via umbilical cord to her mother. Now, tragically, both her parents and her 4 siblings were killed. But we're being told overnight that despite requests from all over the world for the little baby to be adopted, her aunt and uncle have insisted that she must stay with family, and they have announced that they are going to adopt her. So in amongst all of this bad news, some lovely news there for that sweet little girl who survived against all the odds and has been lovingly adopted by her aunt and uncle, which is a heartwarming story.
Now, we're going to talk about something which may help you in the cost of living crisis. You've got to speculate to accumulate, making money on motors. Often that sentence doesn't add up, but there we go. How do you do it? Well, you can invest in an affordable classic. John Mayhead joins me now. John is the editor of Haggerty Price Guide in the UK. And John, when we talk about affordable classics, what are we talking about price-wise?
You can talk about anything. We've got these. We did an article which looked at cars worth under £15,000 that were accessible. And that's still a lot of money for a lot of people. I accept that. but cars that you can drive, you can enjoy, and might go up in value, so you might cover your costs.
So you're talking about a lot of these cars could date 70s, 80s?
Absolutely.
Cars, maybe even into the 90s.
Yeah, wow. I mean, at the moment, we're seeing huge rises in 80s and 90s cars, and it's people like me, Gen X, who've now got maybe a little bit more money, an empty garage, and are going back to our cars of our youth. I mean, one of the cars on the list was the Ford Fiesta XR2.
Yes.
And I mean, one of my best mates had one of those as a kid.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford one then, but now you think, yeah, I'm going to get one of those, and those have gone up by a significant margin this year.
Can you upgrade a basic Fiesta to make it look like an XR2?
Absolutely, that's what you used to do in the day. They just don't go as
faster
fast.
stripes.
Yeah. The stripes.
Well, Ford have discontinued production now of the Fiesta. Does that impact then on its collectability?
It might do in the future. What is more likely to impact its collectability is all the other cars that have already gone up. So the fast Escorts, the Cosworth Sierras, and all those have gone. It's quite stratospheric prices. We've got Cosworth Sierra RSs, in over £100,000. I mean, it's a big amount of money, and it's the ones that are not mucked around with, haven't got new Go Faster stripes put on, but have been looked after, low mileage. Those sort of cars really do well.
Yeah, there is an absolute proliferation of programs, both on YouTube or on television, about restoration and projects and things for cars. So there's a big appetite with it. I am always tempted, but I'm always then put off because I think, you're buying 40-year-old technology.
Yeah.
And, there's got to be serviceability with that and whatever. So I'm not sure. I'm in love with the idea. I want to get a Jaguar XJS. Yeah, but I could just see it could be a total money pit.
Well, it's interesting because you talked about investment. Haggerty doesn't like to talk about investment. We talk about cars you buy for a passion. So you buy that car because you love it. And if it goes up in value and it covers your costs, that's brilliant. But something like that, on our list was the Sovereign, which has fantastic spec.
Yeah.
Burr walnut dash for the early ones, awesome car.
Yeah.
If you buy a cheap one or cheap purchase price, you might have to spend a heck of a lot of money on it. So we always sort of suggest, if you can, buy the best one you can afford, and the chances are that maybe your costs of restoration are low. But then again, you've got a lot of people. This is a community, and lots of people like doing it themselves. Like having that hands-on.
I would not like doing it myself. I might walk around with a bit of a cloth and polish and whatever it is, but I mean, technically, I don't know why I watch programs where you can service an engine and whatever, because I know nothing about anything mechanical, but I am absolutely fascinated by all of this. So I would have to pay a man to do it, really. But you're right there about that community thing. I went to a car show recently in a place called Dollingstown in Northern Ireland, and it was an amazing community day out. People gather, people swap stories. My fascination was with 70s cars in particular, because I was a young teenager in the 70s, and these were the things you dreamt about having, Toyota Celicas and things like that. But something like a Toyota Celica, is that collectible?
Absolutely. Japanese cars, performance Japanese cars are in the States. Haggerty, we're a big company in the States, and over there it's absolutely massive, and it's really taking off here as well. All of those sort of things. The community side of it is absolutely critical, and I think it's really important to know that the size of the classic car industry in this country. It's over £7 billion now, well over £7 billion. That's nearly twice as much as the whole sort of Scotch industry. And there's so many events you can take your car to, and so that's what we always talk about. Is it's your passion, it's your...
So as you say, it doesn't have to be a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or whatever it is.
No.
I mean, could it be, and I'm being serious here, could it be an Austin Princess, an Allegro Marina? Are we talking that level or not?
Right, I don't know if you know this, Haggerty runs an event every year called the Festival of the Unexceptional, and it is a concourse event for those cars that used to be on everybody's driveway, because, you know, unless you were really lucky, you don't remember as a kid what it was like to sit in an Aston Martin and a Ferrari. But I remember what it was like to sit in the back of a full Cortina. Of course. And I can remember the smell, I can remember what the vinyl seats felt like when they're too hot. And there is a celebration of those cars, and we get concourse events. Every year it sells out.
Well, it could be a new way to invest anyway, and certainly an introduction to a whole new community. John Mayhead is the editor of the Haggerty Press Guide. Price Guide, sorry. I need my glasses on. Yeah, thank you, John. Very good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
We're going to take a quick break. After that, we'll be going through your morning papers today. We are joined with sparring partners Martin Daubney and Amy Cameron. See you in just a sec.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Right, it is 25 to 7. A very good morning to you on this Tuesday morning, Eamonn and Isabel. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Shall we take a look at our front pages of the newspapers, starting with the Mail? It's leading with the identification of Nicola Bully's body, reporting that a self-styled psychic found her.
Telegraph reports that Liz Truss and Boris Johnson want the Prime Minister to send British jets to Ukraine.
The Times says the Prime Minister's been warned that any deal he does on the Northern Ireland Protocol could lead to party resignations.
And the Metro reports junior doctors are planning a 72-hour strike next month after voting to take industrial action over pay.
So it is time to go through your papers for the first time this morning, joined by the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP and regular on the show, Martin Daubney, and environmental campaigner and also regular, Amy Cameron. Very warm welcome to both of you. Amy, let's start with you. She's on the front of most of the papers this morning, and this is, of course, Nicola Bully. The family not only heartbroken, but actually quite angry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, first of all, it goes without saying that I think everyone's thoughts are with the family and also the incredibly small community who've both been rocked by the loss of Nicola, but also, I think, just the intensity and the kind of vulgarity, I think, unfortunately, of the media circus which has surrounded them. This process has, I think there's many lessons that can and will be learned in terms of how both the police and the media have responded to this story. I think one of the things I'm kind of struck by around this piece is I think what it speaks to fundamentally, the way the public and media responded to this is an increasing breakdown in trust in the police. So I think historically, people allowed the police to exercise discretion or to request privacy from the public, from the media. But I think very understandably, because of the actions of the police, specifically the Met Police over the last couple of years, people have justifiable suspicion. And I think unfortunately that's playing out in this very unhealthy way in this case.
Do you think it is just that, or do you think it also coincides with the rise of TikTok, with the rise of true crime fascination, where everybody thinks they're an expert now? So you have this vacuum in trust, but you also have these people who are more interested in these kinds of cases than ever before.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's an expert these days, aren't they? You know, everybody's a journalist, everyone's a policeman, everyone's a detective. And I think it's important to point out that the rank and file bobbies that were doing the search were just kind of following orders. And I think that's the disconnect. The whole lot of them are getting smeared about terrible communication errors, I think, from the top brass. I mean, why on earth weren't the search and rescue people told stuff that the public had no reason to know at all? And the final twist is this guy, Jason Rothwell, a spiritualist from Oldham,
which isn't, we should point out, particularly close by.
No,
so he obviously travelled to the area.
Quite. So he's come from outside the area and finds the body in the kind of the reeds that along the side. Did that fall into the original search remit for the dive team? It appears not. So it's just a final plot twist and something which has captivated the nation. And there'll be a whole conversation about media intrusion as well from other channels. And lots and lots of lessons to learn, but hopefully now the family can finally get a bit of peace.
I think you are right, though, Isabel. Like, there's always been this kind of narcissistic urge, I think, to be close to big events, right? But what social media has done and has taken what used to be, you know, the crank calls that the police would be subjected to and turned those into sort of viral conspiracy theories. And I think, you know, rather than asking for privacy, the police unfortunately did, as Martin has touched on, I think fuel that with the release of deeply personal and personally, I think, gratuitous personal information. The undercurrent of which I think there was misogyny in there. There was details revealed about Nicola Bully that I don't think would have been revealed had this been a missing man. And I think, you know, as Martin's already said, I think there's a huge amount to be reflected on here from the police and I think from the media. I find it quite jarring, to be honest, that the Mail have chosen to still on the front page lead with this psychic angle. I just...
To be fair, it's not just the Mail. I mean, you know, broadsheets have it inside as well. We had the conversation this morning, didn't we, Eamonn, about whether or not it was responsible to be promoting what would be called quackery in days gone by.
Yeah, it's a kind of jarring piece. The way it's been covered in a lot of the papers, as you see, is jarring, because on the one hand, they're saying, you know, oh, no, we mustn't have these TikTok experts. And then on the other hand, they're leading with the fact that they believe a psychic revealed where he was found. If that doesn't fuel this sort of conspiratorial, everyone's an expert atmosphere, I don't know what does.
OK, well, listen, we're going to take a pause in the papers because we can speak to the government about the big issues of the day, and then we will come back to continue the paper round. So I'd like to welcome the Minister for Women and a nurse as well, Maria Caulfield, to the programme. Good morning to you. Can we start, since we were just discussing Nicola Bully, and I know that you are, as you say, a Secretary of State for Women, your thoughts on the whole case and whether or not, as Suella Braverman is suggesting, there should be an independent review of Lancashire Police's handling of this case?
Yeah, well, obviously my sympathies are with Nicola's family. You know, tragic events that we've seen play out, and I know the family have called for privacy, so I don't want to dwell too much on her specific case. And the Home Secretary is reviewing how the police handled the case as well. But I think, you know, it's obviously a tragic event, and I think, you know, I was listening to your piece just before coming on air, and actually, you know, we do need to learn some lessons collectively about how we speculate about these cases in the future.
Well, one of the elements of the investigation that the police released was her struggle with the menopause. It's something that a lot of women can relate to, and I know it's something that you want to talk about this morning, not in relation to Nicola Bully, but in HRT specifically. And the government's announcing new measures to try and ease access for women. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for too long the impact of the menopause on women has been really underestimated. And for some women, they do go through the menopause relatively lightly. Maybe their periods stop and they have a few hot flushes. But for a lot of women, they have quite debilitating symptoms from, night sweats to mood swings to brain fog, heart palpitations. And these don't just go on for days or weeks or even months. They sometimes can go on for years. And HRT is one of those things that can restore some of a woman's hormones and reduce some of those effects, so that women who are really in the prime of their life, who are really struggling with maybe young families, caring for older relatives, trying to hold down busy, successful jobs, HRT can be a lifeline for many women. And as the government, we want to support women who are going through the menopause and reducing the cost of HRT by announcing our prepayment certificates, which will mean that for a double prescription charge, that's all a woman will have to pay for a whole year. It means HRT will be affordable for women and shouldn't be a factor when women are considering whether to take HRT or not.
And many women will be pleased to hear that this morning, and yet I'm told by many women who want to get access to HRT that it's not actually about the cost that's prohibitive, it's actually about the supply chain. They simply, either can't see a GP to get that prescription, or the pharmacists simply don't have what they need. What are you doing to address the supply chain issues?
Well, the cost is an issue for some women. If they're on other medication, for example, they will already be paying prescription charges, say for asthma inhalers, or for if they're diabetic. So to add on HRT can be a considerable cost, and the new prepayment certificate will save women hundreds of pounds, particularly those who are on the dual hormone, estrogen and progesterone. But I absolutely take your point about supply. We've been a victim of our own success. We've seen a 50% increase in the number of women coming forward for HRT, which has put pressure on supply. That's a success story. We want women to be getting onto HRT. We are meeting with industry on a regular basis. Our last meeting was only last week. We have over 70 HRT products, and there's really only a shortage for 5 of those. Now, if you're a woman who's on one of those 5, that's an issue, but that's why we've put in what we call SSPs to manage the stock. One of those hormones will be coming back in stock this week. So it's an active management of the situation. We did have over 19 products that were in short supply. We're now down to 5. But as more women come onto HRT, we are working with manufacturers to increase that supply so we can keep up with the demand. So I want to reassure women we are working behind the scenes to make sure that they can get reliable access to their HRT when they need their prescriptions renewing.
OK, I want to ask you, it is Tuesday, Cabinet will be meeting. The papers are reporting this morning that a Brexit deal that is being suggested by Rishi Sunak may trigger resignations. Of course, the Prime Minister for the last 3 months has been working very hard to be a unity Prime Minister. This is a first real test for him. We've already heard now from Penny Mordaunt and Suella Braverman saying if he drops that protocol bill, there could be problems.
Yeah, so the Northern Ireland Protocol has been an issue for a while now. We know that. That's why there isn't an up and running assembly in Northern Ireland or an executive, and that's causing problems for people in Northern Ireland, because devolved matters such as health, for example, are not able to be addressed. And so it's really crucial, and that's why the Prime Minister has put this as one of his first priorities, to try and sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol. A deal hasn't been reached. Negotiations are ongoing, and I think we all agree that we need to resolve this once for all. First and foremost for the people of Northern Ireland, and that's
with
the
respect,
Prime Minister's
people are aware
priority
of the reasons why it needs resolving. The question is how the Prime Minister is going to resolve it. The Labour Party are accusing the Prime Minister of putting party before country, that he's basically being held to ransom by his backbenchers.
Well, I think that's, for the Labour Party to say that after they tried to thwart Brexit at every opportunity, it absolutely, shows the brass neck of the Labour Party. But the Prime Minister is working through the negotiations. Well, but we haven't got a deal. What are they voting for? We haven't seen the details, and that just tells you that they're playing politics with the situation. Our priority is trying to get this right for the people of Northern Ireland, the Prime Minister has met with the DUP, for example, who are happy with elements of it, the work now is to try and get those negotiations to a place where we can get an agreement on this and can make progress.
What do you make of the interventions from Boris Johnson and now Liz Truss as well on the introduction of jets to Ukraine? Is it coordinated mischief-making, as some people are suggesting?
But I think the Prime Minister has been very clear he wants to support Ukraine. We've done this huge amount already. We've got the first anniversary coming up this Friday when there'll be a minute's silence at 11 o'clock to commemorate the start of the conflict. And the Prime Minister is trying to encourage allies across the Western world to support Ukraine with help and support. And absolutely, jets are one of those issues, and he's asked the Defence Secretary to look at this. So I think we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, but they have to be the right pieces of equipment that Ukraine can use quickly and don't need months of training in order to be able to use. So there's lots of work going on behind the scenes on this specific issue.
And just lastly, with your hat on as Junior Minister in Health and Social Care, I've got to ask you about the junior doctors going out on strike, with the BMA yesterday saying that those newly qualified are effectively earning £14 an hour, that many doctors are living in conditions that have mould and damp. This can't be right for our doctors. They're going to be leaving in their droves.
Well, a junior doctor covers anyone from a newly qualified doctor right through to someone who's about to become a consultant. And so wages, starting wages are around 33,000, go up to over 55,000. But what the BMA are asking for is 26%. Now, that is just not affordable. And so, we have to be realistic in terms of what the country can afford. They were given an 8.4% pay deal. They're not on the independent pay review body scheme. They're on a multi-year settlement, which they absolutely supported at the time, and so I would say to them, particularly when they're saying they won't cover areas like A&E and ITU, that patients will be put at risk by these strikes, and so they need to negotiate with the government for their next multi-year pay settlement, but 26% is not something that we can afford.
Caulfield, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
So back to the papers, and Martin Dobney, a number of things in terms of the cabinet meeting today. Front page of the Telegraph, we're talking about two former prime ministers, if we can call Liz Truss a prime minister. They're saying to Boris Johnson, send the jets to Ukraine. And meanwhile, we've got front page of the Times, where the Brexit deal, or lack of it, may trigger resignations today from Suella Braverman.
Yeah, and both these stories, in a sense, go back to that everybody's an expert thing. There's a lot of backseat driving going on here, particularly backstabbing driving as well. There's a lot of that going on. On the weekend, it was Boris talking about Brexit, sabre rattling to Rishi about betraying the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is a bit rich because Boris is the one that got us into this fine mess in the start. I voted for this deal on 29th of January 2020 as an MEP on the basis that we would begin negotiating and get a better deal for Britain. That didn't happen. So it's a bit rich for Boris to be saying, come on, Rishi, do the business, when he was the architect, really, of this terrible deal. I think the oven-ready deal was a complete turkey from the start. As for the jets, again, it's like everybody has to be this action man. It's like Boris thinks this was my war, and he's telling people how to run it now. And you can't just send jets like a classic Jag Sovereign. It takes years to learn how to fly one of these things. It's actually a longer-term strategic manoeuvre here rather than a short-term military fix. And then we had Biden hoving interviews, got record low approval ratings back home domestically, and he goes for his photo call in Ukraine, which seems to be de rigueur now to make you look like a tough politician. And I think Ukraine has just become this pawn in kind of narcissistic political manoeuvrings.
Yes.
And as we approach the end game of Brexit, back to the resignations, if there was any honour, that would happen. That's why it won't.
That's why it won't. OK. Amy, let's talk about energy bills, right? Household energy bills. This is the Times. Likely to be hundreds of pounds cheaper in the second half of the year. Will those savings be passed on?
Yeah, so thanks, this is a story in the Times, as you say, thanks to the fairly mild winter that we saw, also changes in behaviour right across Europe, and we've increased supply from elsewhere. We have increased our reserves of energy supply, and as a result, we are seeing a fall in the cost. Unfortunately, that is happening ahead of what is still predicted to be an increase of about 40% in ordinary people's energy bills come the Hunt's budget in April. There have already been calls from multiple places, not least Martin Lewis and others, for Jeremy Hunt to use this unexpected decrease in energy costs to maintain the energy price guarantee at the level that it currently is. There will be viewers at home, people right across the country, terrified about any increase in costs anticipated ahead of April. Jeremy Hunt has this headroom now. I don't see why we can't use that. Along with, I would also advocate for clamping down on loopholes in the windfall tax, which we know have seen energy companies making phenomenal profits at the same time as families are being squeezed. So if energy prices are coming down, why are we not seeing that reflected in a maintenance of the energy price guarantee, which would take a huge amount of mental and financial strain off British families come the budget in April?
Well, that's because the government bought at the top of the market to secure energy supplies for the future. So the reason that prices are the usual thing, they go up like a rocket and they fall like a feather, same with petrol, is that they had to buy to secure, for the future when it was very expensive. And the lag is why it's taking so long, because they're still selling us the stuff they bought at the top of the market price. But I think this whole debacle, Ukraine, everything, asks a big question about our energy sovereignty, our self-reliance. We just don't have. And I know you're a big advocate for renewables, and here we go again, but at the moment there's no wind or sun, and that's when we need the most power. Renewables let us down. So we need to have a more balanced energy portfolio, including nuclear. And if we plough on with no petrol vehicles by 2035, how are we going to power them? Where do they plug in? Because at the moment, the grid couldn't cope.
Can I ask, what's happened to the Severn barrage? Why don't we talk about harnessing tidal power more? Because that is one thing that is always there, unlike the wind and solar.
I think that, first of all, I think just worth flagging that offshore wind is pretty consistent, actually, as an energy source. And people who advocate for renewables, exactly to your point, Isabel, advocate for a portfolio of different technologies which are, combined with energy efficiency savings, which are the ultimate cost saver for homes, are perfectly capable of meeting our energy needs in the UK. To your point, though, I think it's a really interesting one, because historically, our government has been so afraid of investing in new technologies. And as a result, we do see these booming industries of renewables going abroad. So offshore is a huge success story in the UK, offshore wind. Are we, as British taxpayers, benefiting predominantly from that? No, because you know who owns most of those offshore wind farms? Other countries' governments. So Norway own huge amounts.
So you've hit the nail on the head. So all of the renewables, the money goes offshore anyway. We don't see lower prices, in our bills.
Lower prices.
We don't see a tax benefit. We don't see an awful lot of jobs to Britain.
We do see
all of which we could have if we came onshore and looked at things like shale, thousands and thousands of jobs.
You're sort of coming at it from a weird angle, though, because I think
rather
to some
giving
extent,
all of our money
Martin,
away
what
to
we're
Norway.
agreeing on is that we should be investing in our own energy supply. Absolutely, no one will argue with you on that. But what we should be investing in is clean, cheap, the cheapest form of energy and the fastest energy that we can get on stream, which is renewable energy. So I would absolutely agree with you in advocating for energy sovereignty. Where I would strongly disagree with you is that I think, personally, we should be going for the fastest and cheapest and, of course, cleanest form of that energy, which is renewable.
Do you know what's happening quite quickly? People's habits are changing.
Yeah.
People, I'm not saying this is a good way to go about it, but through necessity, people are saying, I'll put on a jumper, I'll wrap a blanket around me, I'll turn off that light, will not use the tumble dryer, whatever it happens to be. Do you think those habits are likely to stick?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I hope so. I think there's a difference here, right, between identifying where we are possibly wasteful around energy and where simple behaviour changes, things like, as you say, putting on a jumper is not an unreasonable thing to do in the winter. I think where we have to be really careful is the number of people who are already struggling to manage even a sort of basic healthy level of warmth in their homes. And that's why, along with those kind of behavioural changes, which do need to be maintained, we do absolutely need a rollout of insulation.
The reason we're needing more jumpers and more staying warm and we're spending through the nose on heating is net zero targets are bankrupt in the country, especially the poorest and the frailest and the most elderly.
It's such a weird argument that the cheapest form of energy that we have is theoretically responsible for the cost of energy, which is spiked in response to oil and gas prices spiking.
But we
it
have
makes
to
absolutely no sense.
But we're importing our gas from America. We're importing our coal from Australasia. It's madness that we're shipping
let's replace that
halfway around the world when we have our own
We have to
supplies.
blow a whistle.
More madness in 40 minutes' time from Martin and Amy. If you want to get involved, you know what to do. Email us or tweet as well. But please do stay with us. We will take a break after that. We're going to have more from Lancashire as Nicola Bully's body is identified by police and there's continued fallout into the whole investigation.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to our latest weather update from the Met Office. Well, today we'll see some rain and some sunny spells around as well, but it'll be quite mild. But it's all change as we go through tonight and into the start of Wednesday, as this cold front will make its way south and eastwards through this evening and overnight, marking a change to something just a bit colder for the second half of this week. But back to the start of today, and it's quite a cloudy start for many out there this Tuesday morning. There might be some brighter spells just to the lee of high ground, but it will be dry for many. Rain for some, particularly across the far northwest, so we could see a few heavy bursts through this morning. A freshening breeze here as well, so it's just going to take the edge off those temperatures through today. Though elsewhere, with all the cloud around, it's going to be another mild one, with temperatures widely in the double figures. Now going through this evening and overnight, and this band of cloud and rain, which is that cold front I mentioned earlier, it's going to spread south and eastwards through tonight, bringing some heavier bursts, particularly across northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England through tonight. Ahead of this, it'll be mostly dry but quite cloudy, but behind this, with a freshening breeze and some clearing spells, there might just be a touch of grass frost around to start Wednesday. Now going through the rest of tomorrow, and this band of rain and cloud will make its way south and eastwards, clearing the far southeast around mid to late afternoon. So it could be quite cloudy for most of the day for East Anglia and southeast England. Though behind that cold front, there'll be plenty of sunny spells, though also quite a few blustery showers. So feeling colder behind the band of rain, though ahead of that, temperatures still remaining in the double figures for Wednesday. Looking through to the rest of the week, though, as I say, a colder end of the week to come with overnight frosts more likely, though not much in the way of rain and just a few sunny spells as well. Bye for now.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The family of Nicola Bully say she can finally rest as her body is formally identified.
It's 7 o'clock. A very good morning to you, Tuesday the 21st of February. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The devastated family of Nicola Bully have described her as the centre of their world after the mum of two's body was recovered from the River Wire. They're now calling for the press and the public to be held accountable for false accusations. Government Minister Maria Caulfield says we need to be more careful in future and not always jump to conclusions.
Home Secretary is reviewing how the police handled the case as well. And actually, you know, we do need to learn some lessons collectively about how we speculate about these cases in the future.
Prime Minister will chair Cabinet today amid warnings of government resignations over his Brexit deal. Yesterday, the Home Secretary became the second minister to warn Rishi Sunak against dropping the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill.
The US President Joe Biden has pledged a new $500 million military package to Ukraine during a surprise visit to Kyiv ahead of the first anniversary of the war. It comes as former Prime Ministers Liz Truss and Boris Johnson both call for jets to be sent to the conflict.
2 new earthquakes have struck Turkey overnight, killing at least 3 people and injuring 200. Tremors of 6.4 and 5.8. Collapsed buildings, with rescuers once again searching for people trapped.
And it's Shrove Tuesday today, so do get in touch with us. Let us know how you'll be celebrating, if you'll be celebrating, how you like yours, and do give us your tips on the perfect pancake.
Terence in St Albans. Good morning, Terence. Basically 300 millilitres of plain flour, 2 eggs, a pinch of salt, half a pint of milk, water to make the mixture runny, and cook with butter. Terence's favourite toppings are lemon and sugar or maple syrup.
Linda says the same, but they are very filling, so 2 each is enough. Nutella is gross and overrated. Okay, that's me told. Thank you all.
2 pancakes is enough. Of course. Absolutely. Keep giving us your menus. Our top story this morning, the family of Nicola Bully say she can finally rest after the mother of two's body was recovered yesterday.
In a statement read out by Lancashire Police, the family also said that the press and the public must be held accountable for false accusations and the vilification of friends and loved ones.
Now, earlier on Breakfast, we spoke to former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley. He said the force will learn lessons from Nicola's death.
When the dust settles, they're going to have to take a very long, hard look at how they've conducted all of this, not only the investigation, but very much the communication. And I hope that the wider British police take some lessons from all of this, because quite frankly, if you get the messaging wrong and people don't believe you, they're not going to trust your investigations. And that, I think, is part of the reason why so many people turned up at St Michael's on Wye.
With that, we go to our national reporter, Theo Chikomba. He joins us from Lancashire. Theo, good morning. The situation this morning, what have you got to report?
Yes, that's right. It's been a challenging few weeks for Nicola's family, her children, parents, and of course, close friends, as they were searching for answers whilst Lancashire police were carrying out their investigations after she went missing towards the end of January on the 27th. Over those weeks, specialist investigators, many people have been coming to assist the police's investigation, and on Sunday, just a few days ago on the weekend, at around 11:30, the police received a call from someone who had seen something in the River Wire just less than a mile from where we are. We're in the centre of St Michael's on Wire, along the road where she was last seen after dropping her children off at school. And over the last 24 hours, we have subsequently learned that the body that was seen on Sunday was indeed hers, officially confirmed by Lancashire Police. And they held a press conference yesterday evening around 5:30, and they had this to say: sadly, we've been able to confirm that yesterday, on Sunday, we recovered Nicola Bully from the River Wire, and Nicola's family have been informed and are, of course, devastated. Our thoughts are with them at this time, as well as their loved ones and the wider community. And the case is now going to be handled by a coroner. We also heard in that press conference a statement from Nicola's family which read: "We will never be able to comprehend what Nikki had gone through in her last moments, and that will never leave us." And within that statement, they did criticise parts of the press who have been here, particularly many members of the traditional media, but of course many people who've been coming here on their own to film, to put things on places like TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and so much more. And of course, in wrapping up in their statement, they also said, "Finally, Nikki, you are no longer a missing person. You have been found, and we can let you rest now." So the family are grieving after that official confirmation in the last 48 hours.
Theo, thank you very much indeed. Just asking you listening or watching at home, where do you stand in all of this in terms of cooperation with the police? Do you think the police really want your help, or should you just keep your nose out of things that are police business? I mean, we've got this whole situation today where this guy who is a self-styled spiritualist or psychic, was it his psychic powers, was it his spiritualist powers that led him to find Nicola's body, or did he just stumble upon it? What happened here? Should we be thankful to this guy, or should we be cynical of him as well? Just let us know where you stand on all of this.
I read a statistic: something like 90% of missing persons cases are solved by the public, or not solved, but if they are found, so they're found by the public. So they are important.
Yeah.
But I think the sort of clash comes when they're sort of, disrespecting each other, perhaps. Yeah, so let us know your thoughts on all of this.
But also, when Nicola's body was retrieved yesterday, all these reports of people recording the retrieval and this ending up on social
TikTok,
media. And, just where does the intrusion end? How disrespectful, and just your views. Welcome. Would you tune in? Would you tune to see Nicola's body being retrieved from those reeds?
Do you know, also I think it's interesting that, the family criticised a couple of broadcasters yesterday for going too far. And I do wonder, because I know all of us broadcasters have strict guidelines and principles from Ofcom, if there's more pressure on these broadcasters because of the rise of TikTok, because of the rise of true crime, to try and be ahead of the curve. They're desperate for a new line.
Because they have the story.
It's fever pitch. In a time like, I've never known it quite so feverish, really, around these kinds of cases, and I do wonder if it's linked. Anyway, let us know what you think about all of that.
The time, 8 minutes past 7.
The Prime Minister is to chair a cabinet meeting today amid speculation that ministers could resign over his Brexit deal if it risks Northern Ireland's protocol.
OK, don't worry, nobody understands it. Isabel, nobody understands it at all. The Home Secretary thinks she understands it. Her name is Suella Braverman, and she became the second member of Cabinet to warn the Prime Minister against ditching the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. Now, earlier the Health Minister, the Women's Health Minister, Maria Caulfield, told us that striking a deal, I don't know with who, but that's the Prime Minister's priority.
So the Northern Ireland Protocol has been an issue for a while now. We know that. That's why there isn't an up and running assembly in Northern Ireland or an executive, and that's causing problems for people in Northern Ireland, because devolved matters such as health, for example, are not able to be addressed. And so it's really crucial, and that's why the Prime Minister has put this as one of his first priorities, to try and sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol. A deal hasn't been reached. Negotiations are ongoing, and I think, we all agree that we need to resolve this once for all. First and foremost for the people of Northern Ireland, and that's the Prime Minister's priority at the moment.
I hope it is. Tom Slater joins us now. Tom is the... sorry, Tom, we're not going to you. We're going live by satellite to the main man. We're going to Northern Ireland. Our reporter there, Dougie Beattie, this morning outside Stormont there. In East Belfast, where nothing happens, it appears. Dougie, I love all this feigned concern. Boris Johnson's getting involved, Suella Braverman's getting involved, Rishi Sunak's getting involved. Where have they all been for the past 2 years?
Well, this deal, of course, was put together by the Tory party at that time, and some of those members voted on it. This, at the heels of the hunt, it's a trade deal, and it's a trade deal to protect a European border, to protect the integrity of the single market, of course. And this is the only part of the UK that actually has a land border with Europe. And they've made a very bad job of it because the democracy here behind us isn't running, and that's because the unionists very much oppose a lot of what is in that deal. And the main thing they look at is the European courts and what say they have inside Northern Ireland. So, speaking to sources last night inside the DUP, they say these talks are going forward. They are travelling, but they are prepared to take their time. They don't want to rush into anything. They want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted before they go into another deal that, whatever happens, they'll have to deal with for the next 30 or 40 years right here. And of course, on the other side of it, we have Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach in the Republic of Ireland, speaking yesterday in Brussels, saying that they shouldn't be playing politics with this deal. And of course, he's about protecting his economy in the south. So there is a very, very small line here, and it's mostly to do with economics rather than politics.
You say that a lot of people will contest that, Dougie. A lot of people would say it's to do with politics rather than economics, because, my friend, and correct me if I'm wrong here, there is the possibility, whatever your political take is on this, whether this leads more to integration with Europe or an integration in terms of a united Ireland, there is a possibility that this could be an absolute gold mine for Northern Ireland itself, in the fact that they're British, they can be part of the UK, and they can also trade with the EU.
Well, that would be the case, but unfortunately 70% of our trade is with the UK. It's not with Europe, and that is being held back by these checks. And most companies, what you're looking at here is companies that are sending stuff across high volume and low profit margins. So say Pompadums that's made in Manchester, only 0.3 of a pence or whatever per item. When they come into Northern Ireland, they have to be checked. When they're checked, there's then a TSS goods charge that is put upon them. They then come in and they're put on our shelves, and they create competition amongst other manufacturers. The problem is now everybody in the UK is saying it's only small profit margin, can't be bothered sending that there. There's not enough profit, there's too much hassle with it, and basically they've closed the market down. And then, of course, we have things like state aid, where you're looking at even single farm payment could fall into that. And that is causing problems here, which will stop trade with the UK. And that is cutting hard. And the biggest advantage that Northern Ireland ever has is that it is, of course, part of the 6th largest economy in the world, and that's the UK.
Well, very well explained, Dougie. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked, is listening to all of that.
Morning
this
to
is
you.
A nightmare, an absolute nightmare. I mean, we have a poppadom problem because of this.
We had a poppadom problem. We had the sausage wars, of course.
Yeah. Sandwiches.
You forget how many chapters in this story there have been, and I think it just speaks to the fact that you've had successive Tory governments which have never been able to properly grasp this issue. They've often kicked the can down the road, signed a deal that they said was oven ready, and yet it turned out to be thoroughly half-baked. And now Rishi Sunak is having to deal with that. I think the problem that we're seeing is that what's being presented again is kind of cosmetic changes. This deal that we've heard about isn't really about getting to the nuts and bolts of the issue, ECJ jurisdiction, state aid, whatever, the issues that have really upset Tory backbenchers and members of the Democratic Unionist Party. It's again just trying to stitch something up to save face rather than get to the actual heart of the problem, which won't resolve it.
So what do
we'll have to reopen it
looking into your crystal ball, what do you see playing out? Do you think that the Prime Minister, in his first real test, because he's been so obsessed, hasn't he, with unity, will just risk defying the DUP in order to try and push this through? Or do you think he'll just shelve it and say this is politically disastrous for us ahead of an election next year? Or how do you see this playing out?
It's really difficult to say. I can only really see two scenarios, one of which is that Rishi Sunak kind of reverts back to what he normally does, which is he backs down in the face of a fight. He's got a very fragile situation with his own party. You'll notice that his kind of 5 priorities are quite uncontroversial, at least with the Tory party. That's why Northern Ireland isn't actually in there. But at the same time, we have been hearing that a deal is imminent. I think that the question is that the fact that doing a deal with the EU, which is basically just giving in to the EU at this point, that was always going to be the easy part. The difficult part was actually getting it past the DUP and his own backbenchers. So even if he does manage to produce something, whether it's this week, next week or in the coming days, it's not going to solve the issue, because I think, this has become a very technical discussion. Our brains hurt whenever we have to kind of refresh our memories about it. But at the end of the day, it is about a part of the United Kingdom having been hived off by the European Union.
What's in it? Explain, if you can, Tom. There has to be something in it for the UK government as opposed to Northern Ireland. You're not going to convince me that Boris Johnson gives a rat's ass about what goes on in Northern Ireland, because he's consistently shown he hasn't, and he's not across the brief. And so there is something in this for the UK government. What is it?
Well, that's a really good question, because as you say, I mean, Boris Johnson piping up about the Northern Ireland Protocol, Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, he, of course, was the architect of it. You can understand that he wants to probably just bash Rishi Sunak. Also, he probably wants to try and defend his legacy, suggest that he didn't give up on this question. It just needs to be sorted out now. In terms of the UK government, I think they just want this problem to go away.
But is there something in the protocol that they can use when we talk about ripping up EU legislation or defying the European courts or whatever it is that something that just does not apply to solely Northern Ireland?
Well, the thing is, they've always had options at their disposal, and we've had various different attempts to deal with this particular question. Remember the Internal Markets Bill, there was talk of invoking Article 16 in the protocol itself. There was, of course, the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which would allow the UK government to legislate unilaterally to disapply parts of the protocol that were a threat as they saw it to UK sovereignty. The problem is that those were, in each case, there was always a kind of backing down. We've now seen that protocol bill being paused, leverage put to one side at a time when you're actually trying to strike a deal. And it does just raise the question of whether or not any of these Tory governments have ever really been serious about dealing with this problem, or whether they were happy to just for GB to Brexit.
Problems here. There is a protocol problem and negotiations with Europe. And there is another problem. People can say what they want, but the Democratic Unionist Party are frightened silly of closer links with the Republic of Ireland. That is what they think. This is the slippery slope to a united Ireland. So there are two issues here. There's the economic that Dougie talked about there, and there's also the political aspect of all of this.
And that's exactly right. And I think that's also one of the things which in mainland GB, shall we say, is not often fully appreciated. I think the problem is those who are kind of hoping that the kind of status of Northern Ireland going forward is going to be somehow affected by this. Ultimately, that should be a decision for the people of Northern Ireland. And I think even if people are supporters of United Ireland, they shouldn't be welcoming a situation where their hand is strengthened because the EU intervenes on their behalf and poses some sort of land grab. That's no positive way forward, regardless of where you stand on this question.
Tom, really appreciate that. Thank you for trying to shed some light. And it's a developing situation. We thought we would hear something on this tomorrow.
If it's not today, then it will be next week, because, of course, there's no time in the agenda with the anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. So if it's not today, we can forget about it till at least next week. With the time at 7:18, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. And a new study shows the UK has spent more than £50 billion extra on gas since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit says the UK paid more for wholesale gas last year than in a typical pre-pandemic year.
6.4 magnitude earthquake has been reported near Turkey's border with Syria overnight. The government says 3 people are dead, more than 200 have been injured, and this is an area still clearing up from one of the worst natural disasters in Turkey's history. 47,000 people killed just 2 weeks ago by a larger quake.
2/3 of Scots think Nicola Sturgeon made the right decision to step down as both party leader and as First Minister. A new poll by firm Savanta also says more than half of SNP voters are feeling the same.
Time's approaching 7:20. The American President Joe Biden has promised further military aid for Ukraine, worth £450 million during his visit to Kyiv ahead of the first anniversary of the war.
It comes as former Prime Ministers Liz Truss and Boris Johnson call for the UK to send jets to Ukraine. Well, we're joined now by the former Senior Military Intelligence Officer, Philip Ingram. Very good morning to you. First of all, just reflecting on the fact that President Biden made it to Kyiv. We knew he was heading to Poland. There was lots of speculation, will he, won't he? And goodness me, the security that must have been involved for that to happen.
Massive security effort to get in there. You know, I'm shocked that he managed to get in and get out and look so natural strolling through the streets of Kyiv, because what was going on in the background, the planning for it and all the rest of it, would have been unprecedented when it comes to even beyond the usual security standards that we see with POTUS flying around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of the security protocols that come into play, Philip, through Bill Clinton's various visits to Northern Ireland. And I, as a reporter, I had to be with the president, and I had to also work closely with the CIA to the degree that I was tackled by the CIA at one stage, but that's a whole other story. But the security, the drains that they search, everything. And looking at Biden, who mostly doesn't look as if he knows where he is, but there he was in the middle of a war zone yesterday. Absolutely incredible that he could be there, the leader of the free world.
And showing real solidarity with President Zelensky. And Zelensky's actually been right up to the front line to his own troops there, whereas Vladimir Putin is increasingly hiding away in corridors of Moscow where people aren't seeing him. It's showing two completely different leadership styles, and it's sending a very clear message, not just to Vladimir Putin, but the Russian people and to the rest of the world. Of course, we had the Munich Security Conference at the end of last week, and after that, the US Secretary of State Blinken turning around and making very strong comments to China about warning them not to supply military material to Moscow. The pressure's being put on Moscow.
Yeah, and that being said, do you think that adds weight to Liz Truss and Boris Johnson's calls for these jets to be sent to Ukraine? Because, I'm seeing more and more mention in the papers of, are we on the brink of World War III? And if we are, then let's send the jets.
Well, sending the jets, it's a great soundbite. It's actually really quite difficult to do because, even if you take an experienced US pilot who's been flying fighter jets for a long time, and I read this from an F-16 trainer, because we keep hearing about the F-16s. It takes a number of weeks to convert that pilot from the normal aircraft fighter jet that they fly onto F-16s. And then it takes a minimum of 69 days back to back, that's with no breaks, no weekends, nothing, to learn how to fight that jet. And that's just to fight it as a wingman level, not to be really experienced and all the rest of it. And the real difficulty is the Ukrainians have to put their most experienced pilots out in the jets. If you put most experienced pilots in a jet that they don't quite know how to fight properly because they haven't got that experience, and then put them onto the front line, there's a greater chance you're going to lose them. So the jet thing sounds really simple. Just give them kit and they'll fly it. It's really, really complex indeed. So it's great that politicians make these sound bites, but it's been weighed up very, very carefully indeed. And I think Rishi Sunak said that the UK would support other countries giving jets to Ukraine, first of all, whilst we then continue to train the Ukrainian pilots. And that would be an indication that the MiG-29s that some countries have got, former Soviet jets that the Ukrainians know how to fly and know how to fight, would be the natural first step. But we're talking of a good 4 to 6 months before Ukrainian pilots would be ready for any Western jets.
Long after the first anniversary, and each side, I mean, particularly the Russians, very keen to make it look as though they've made strides within that year. So are you expecting an upping in the onslaught from the Russians?
Well, I think Vladimir Putin's making his State of the Nation speech today, and he will be trying to spin some form of success, but at the same time trying to spin the fact that this isn't now just a Russian conflict against the Ukrainians, it's a Russian conflict against the whole of the West, and trying to do that to justify further expenditure on military material, further call-up of personnel, and to try and get the Russian people to dig deep in the resolve. He's got an uphill struggle, and there's a lot of political manoeuvring going on the flanks at the minute. I think Putin's in trouble.
OK, Philip Ingram, we have to leave it there. I really appreciate your take. Former Senior Military Intelligence Officer, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Look, we'll hit the break. The time's 7:25, and then we have Paul Coit looking ahead to Liverpool's showdown with Real Madrid tonight.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Quickly approaching 7:30. In fact, it's 7:29.
Still to come.
We like a bit of time. We do like a bit of time.
From Queen Victoria's underwear to the world's largest pearl, we'll be digging through a little pawn shop in a sort of very middle-class area, finding out...
No, you said underwear and pawn on the one, but it wasn't
No,
porn.
she was very, very prissy, actually. She wouldn't have liked any of that.
But I don't care who it is. Would you really want Queen Victoria's underwear?
Well, possibly, because that's, that's an artefact, technically, because of who she was. But it is a bit weird. 8:20. As Keir Starmer tells farmers they deserve better when it comes to trade, we'll find out about Labour's plan to boost homegrown produce.
Don't believe a word of it. They all want to support farmers when the going gets tough, and they think, oh yeah, well, we need homegrown produce now because of the Ukraine war and things. Do they care normally? No, they don't. None of these political parties care about farmers, but we should start caring about farmers. Get in touch at GB News. The back pages stack up like this. Champions League action tonight. The Mail says all eyes on Anfield. Liverpool getting ready to take on Real Madrid this evening.
The Mirror says Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp found it too painful to re-watch the team's loss to Real Madrid in last year's Champions League final.
And the Star goes, we're going to pay, but we're going to stay, after the Reds owner, that's Liverpool in this case, said he would not be selling the Premier League club. Make your mind up, for goodness sake. Paul Coyte is with us now this morning. So that's the big match tonight.
Your Liverpool love continues, I see.
So every time they say Reds, I mean, I'm thinking Man U.
Is there only one? There's only one Reds. There's only one Reds.
What are they talking about?
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, so they must play 2 super games according to Jurgen Klopp.
Well, Jurgen's been talking about that, and she just mentioned that he found it too painful to watch what happened in the Champions League final last year, because Real Madrid, if you remember, it was all puff and win from Liverpool, but Real Madrid just took it very easy, and they just had no problem with that game at all. So he's finally watched it because they've got to play them again, and that's tonight in the last 16 of the Champions League. So the first game is at Anfield, which is tonight, and then the next leg. See, often it's a debate whether you want to play at home first or second. Usually... Probably second. You'd want to be second, wouldn't you? You'd want to be second. But there's no away goals now. So, who knows? If they go out and they need to win, though. Quite frankly, they need to win. If they go into the Bernabeu and still with the quality of Real Madrid, Carlo Ancelotti, it's going to be hard. But Liverpool, they can say they're on the turn, but there's been a few twists and turns in the season, so we just don't know with Liverpool at the moment. But it should be a good game. It should be a very good game.
OK, let's talk about Bolton. Bolton Wanderers Stadium.
Careful what you say.
Right, well, Bolton Wanderers, you remember Burnden Park? Back in the old days, it was originally Burnden Park. Then they moved to a new stadium in 1997. So when you get sponsorship, obviously a lot of money goes to the club when the stadium is sponsored. So they were the Reebok Stadium back in the 90s. Then it went to the Macron Stadium. It's been the University of Bolton Stadium. So now it's been sponsored by a building supplier. So from July...
What's a Macron Stadium? That's Isabel's favourite word.
Macron.
Macron.
He sponsored it himself.
How do you say that with a Bolton accent?
Le Macron Stadium.
Le Macron.
It was Le Macron Stadium. But now, I better not say this in a Bolton accent because I'll probably say it the wrong way. It's now going to be called the Tough Sheet Stadium. The Tough Sheet Stadium, and it's... I don't know how Bolton fans will be feeling about it, because, quite frankly, if you don't like the name of the stadium, well, that's just unlucky. So, the Tough Sheet Stadium...
They're a local building company or something.
Yes, they are,
manufacturer.
And they're Bolton fans.
Tough Sheet.
That's...
So it's like corrugated iron or something.
That's right, and I think they...
Let's call it the Corrugated Iron Stadium.
The Corrugated Iron Stadium. So, the thing is, though, that's it, especially after you lose a game and you're playing at a stadium called that. But
no, get the point.
It's where the money is.
If you're going to the movies, look at this. The actor Joe Fiennes is going to play who in a new film?
Well, it's actually a play.
It's a play at the National Theatre. Let's have a look. Here is Joe Fiennes, and here is who he's going to play.
Oh my goodness, that's uncanny.
That's I don't know which one's Joseph Fiennes on the left or the right. One is Gareth Southgate.
Gareth Southgate
It's
on the
going
right.
to be at the National Theatre, so this is not like, your dodgy musical somewhere at the Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch. No offence to the Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch, but it's called Dear England, and he will play Gareth Southgate, and it's the way that Gareth Southgate revolutionised the England team. How this is going to be a play. It opens in July, and they still haven't cast Harry Kane yet, which apparently is going to happen, and also Marcus Rashford. They're looking for a Marcus Rashford.
Who would you like to play Harry Kane? I'm sure you've thought about it.
I'd like Harry Kane, probably.
Of course you would.
A young Robert Redford. I'd say it's probably Brad Pitt should play Harry Kane, but apparently it's feeding into the changing notions of masculinity, which I'm sure is a play that you would love to go and see there.
Well, all I know is that our sports section on the programme in future is going to be sponsored by Tough Sheet.
Oh, is it really? Because there isn't going to be one in future, is that why?
It might be. So that's Tough Sheet to you. Thank you very much indeed.
And good sheet to you, sir, as well. Thank you very much.
We'll take a break. After that,
we have the papers. We've got round 2 between Martin Daubney and Amy Cameron. There'll be fireworks, I suspect. And after that, we'll be discussing the race for Nicola Sturgeon's successor as Kate Forbes has stepped forward and thrown her hat into the ring.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So, welcome back. 7:39 is the time. That means it is 21 minutes before 8.
It does, indeed. And that means it's time to go through the papers. And we're joined this morning by journalist and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney and environmental campaigner Amy Cameron. Martin, let's start with you.
Yeah.
The fallout from Nicola Sturgeon's shock resignation continues. The Telegraph talking about where leadership contenders stand on key issues.
Yeah,
well, you say a shock resignation. I know what you mean by that, but it's interesting, that poll that's been done that basically says most of Scotland said it was time for her to go.
Yes, I know, interesting.
Exactly, and I think it's important to look at this because the next SNP leader, I think, has much more significance than Scotland alone, and it has much more significance than the issue of independence. And so the three runners and riders, Kate Forbes, Ash Regan, the outsider, and Humza Yousaf, who's been called Humza useless by his critics, not by me, I hasten to add. What's really interesting about this is that the gender recognition bill is widely acknowledged as being the straw that broke the camel's back, this ideological backing of the right to change gender, trumping reality or indeed biology. And interestingly, Humza is of the same mindset. And by the way, it's interesting how Keir Starmer gave a speech in Scotland at the weekend, and Keir Starmer didn't mention it because he also backs it, and so does the Scottish Labour leader.
Well, that's a little bit unfair to say he backs it, because he has said as far as it undermines the Equalities Act, so therefore people going into women's safe spaces, he's not OK with it.
But they're all
he's OK with
not to back it.
Yeah. And he also can't define if only a woman can have a cervix, and even the fundamental question...
He says it's a complicated question.
It's not complicated, is it? It really, to me, is not complicated. So that's the first thing. The second thing is free speech. So USAF brought in the hate crime bill in Scotland, which is widely acknowledged as one of the biggest clampdowns on free speech we've ever seen in the world. And that is because you can determine if you're offended by something, and therefore it can be criminalised. Started around the sectarian chants in the old firm derbies. It just went further. The whole country, is a football match. If you're offended, you have the right to complain. And at a time where this guy's looking over the health service, and there's a terrible problem with the NHS in Scotland, should they really be worried about trans rights and also being offensive? I think this is one to really, really watch. And it's interesting how Kate Forbes, who is an evangelical Christian, is being attacked because of her Christianity, because she holds views on same-sex marriage, abortion, and indeed the trans issue, which are deemed impolite in modern society. But you would never see the same criticisms, would you, about a Muslim politician who no doubt holds pretty similar views?
Amy, as the only Scot sitting at the table, your thoughts?
It's time for me to beef up the accent and represent.
You don't need to beef that accent up, it's OK.
You ask people in Scotland that question, they will say my accent's terrible.
Do they?
But I think this is interesting, right, because to some extent what Martin has just articulated is a classic misrepresentation in the kind of mainstream, predominantly England-centric media around the key issues for Scottish voters. So it's very unusual that I'm aligned with Tom Harwood from GBNews, but I saw a fascinating piece he wrote the other day which pointed out that 7 times as many people believe in the Loch Ness Monster than think that trans issues are one of the major issues facing our country. Scottish voters are not
Nicola
voting
Sturgeon
on...
So why did they introduce it then?
Nicola Sturgeon was not brought down by the gender recognition certificate. Nicola Sturgeon, as you just rightly pointed out a second ago, Eamonn, was coming to the end of her tenure. I think she pointed out multiple things in her resignation speech, which I have to say I thought was very dignified compared to the sort of mudslinging we've seen in resignation speeches from other front runners or sort of political leaders. Nicola Sturgeon, unfortunately, I would argue, presided over a policy platform which was too focused on independence and did not meet the needs of the Scottish people. And that was starting to fray at the edges. So when you look at things in Scotland like the NHS, if you look at things like education, that's where the SNP were not delivering. And fundamentally, that's what the Scottish people have become frustrated with. That's why her support was seeping away. And I think
But then are you saying that Humza Yousaf would be ruling himself out because this is like his #1 priority again?
Continuity
but it isn't his #1 priority. It's the thing that he's being asked about repeatedly because the media is obsessed with this issue. I would personally... There's such a misunderstanding of what the gender recognition certificate is that I don't think we necessarily have time to get into it right now in this segment. But I would absolutely love to see these candidates be pressured. Humza Yousaf is currently the Health Secretary. The health situation in Scotland is not great.
It's terrible.
Why are we not asking him about that? Why this media obsession with an issue that features in the top 3 issues for so few members of the public, and predominantly everybody starts from a position of compassion?
I think it's because it shows how the political classes are absolutely devoid and divorced from reality.
I just don't think that's
if you're saying that people don't care about it, why are they bringing it forward as an Act of Parliament? It absolutely goes against what people care about. You're right. So why is that the hill that you would choose to die on?
I think, unfortunately, the media have just had such an absolute field day about this, and it undoubtedly has caused divides in the SNP. I won't argue against that. And you could argue that Nicola Sturgeon used up an awful lot of her political capital around this issue. But surely, when we have 3 new leadership contenders running, this is an opportunity for a fresh for a fresh discussion about the issues that actually matter to Scottish voters.
I have to say, though, in all her time in office, I've never seen her tie herself up in knots as much as she did recently during that interview when she was asked about the Gender Recognition Act. I mean, you can't deny that. It was excruciating, whatever your political views.
Let's go to holiday travel. This is the Telegraph. Martin, thousands of holidaymakers flying from Heathrow are going to have a hidden charge. What is it?
Yeah, this is about Sadiq Khan's ULEZ scheme, which I believe is the biggest act of highway robbery since Dick Turpin. In fact, he makes Dick Turpin look like Mother Teresa. £500 million a year is netted by the £12.50 a day charge to drive a vehicle which is non-compliant. The expansion zone starts in August of this year, and it will take in Heathrow Airport. So if you're travelling to Heathrow Airport by car, some 11% of cars that make that trip will be non-compliant. The chances are most people won't even know about this tax, and they won't know how to pay it. If you don't pay the tax within 3 days, let's face it, you're on holiday then, it's a £160 fine. This will net £8.3 million a year in fines, along with £5 drop-off charges. This is going to pull in a lot of non-Londoners into a London-based tax initiative. Now, there could be a legal case against it for that precise reason. Is the Mayor of London going outside of his power remit by taxing non-Londoners to come in and out? Now, I think this is a terrible idea that people outside of London should really care about, not just those going to Heathrow, but this will be coming to a town or a city near you. It's already in Birmingham, Manchester, Sheffield, and taking money off motorists, the cash cow that's being milked dry, I think is a terrible, terrible thing to do during a cost of living crisis.
Just about money. I don't know if any of you've heard. OK, that's your view. But there's a radio interview that's being broadcast at the moment on behalf of, I presume, Sadiq Khan and in favour of these ULEZ charges. And it quotes a doctor, and he says, I'm a cardiologist working in one of the big teaching hospitals in London, and as a direct result of air pollution caused by the roads, we are seeing this X number of patients coming through, and it leads to cardiovascular disease. Have you heard that advert? Anyone here?
Yes, I have heard it.
Yeah. So there are implications from traffic on our lungs, on our health. Is it, as Martin argues, just about money?
No, I mean, unsurprisingly, I would argue no. And Martin's absolutely right. Hopefully, clean air is coming to cities right across the country. But London has some of the dirtiest air in Europe. Not a single borough in London meets World Health Organization air pollution targets. That's absolutely shocking. And I personally believe that everybody in London deserves to breathe clean air because, exactly to your point, Isabel, if you ask asthma specialists...
Is charging you £5 to drop off at Heathrow or wherever it's going to be, is that cleaning up the air or is it just raising revenue?
So I think the Heathrow thing is a bit of a red herring here, right? All that requires...
It's not a red herring.
But if I'm paying money to drop off at Belfast or Glasgow, why am I paying it for?
But might it make people go on the train instead or think twice? Is it not?
Well, it's not. I mean, you don't go get a train to go to the airport in Belfast, for instance.
Right.
I can't see...
People do to Heathrow,
People don't say, I'm taking the train to Glasgow Airport.
But I think all that this is, all that people are arguing here is that people won't know about it, right? So all that people will need to pay, and I'm not saying £12.50 is no money, but this intervention from the AA is purely about making sure that people have the information that they need. Car parking prices at the airport are absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. So I would argue that what we should be doing, as ever, is making sure it's easier and cheaper for people to travel without needing to rely on expensive polluting cars. Also, to your point, Martin, as you said, we are only talking about 1 in 10 cars which are affected by ULEZ. So what we need to do is support
£500 million a year
to transition onto cleaner cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guys, we've got to call a halt there to
just getting warmed up.
Just getting warmed up.
More from them both, we should say.
Come back at 8:30, and when you're red hot by that stage. Martin Joblin and Amy Cameron, thank you very much indeed. Pawn shops.
Oh, right? Yes, they are currently thriving. And would you believe it, middle-class areas, thanks to the cost of living crisis, people are so desperate for cash, they're selling off luxury goods from fine art to watches and even diamonds.
Well, founder now of Prestige Pawnbrokers, James Constantino, joins us now with this. How's business, James?
It's booming at the moment, for sure, yeah. The phones are ringing off the walls, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, wow. and better off people, I mean, they find themselves, I suppose, asset rich and cash poor, and that's where you step in?
Well, that's how the sort of business model's set up. We sort of aim at the high end of the market. So people who have gathered assets during better times and need to cash them in when they haven't got funds around them. That's how it works for us, yes.
If you went into, say, your pawn shop in Guildford and perhaps you wanted to propose to somebody, could you get a decent bargain, or is it actually selling stuff at about their actual value?
Well, pre-loved goods are generally around between a third and half of the new prices. So, and I mean, a diamond is millions of years old. So, you know, if you come in to buy a ring from us, you can probably get a sort of up to 70% saving from a new piece that you might expect to buy in the high street.
So what James, is the deal? So if you pawn something, do you retain the opportunity to redeem it until it is sold? What's the contract you enter into?
Well, I mean, if you bring something to us, whether it's a watch, a car, a piece of art, or some jewellery, you bring it into us, we'll appraise it, we'll lend you roughly up to sort of 60%, 70% of the item's second-hand value. Once we've forwarded the funds to you, the clock starts ticking. You can pay it back at any time during the 7-month loan period, and you'll pay for what you use. If you borrow £100,000 from me, for example, and you have it for 1 month, it'll probably cost you about £102,900. So it'd be £2,900 to borrow 100 grand. And for short-term funding, it's actually very cheap, probably cheaper than the high street bank.
Interesting. What are some of the most weird and wonderful things that you've had come through your doors?
Well, you know, when we get offered a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, we've had Nigerian fighter jets offered to us. We've had Queen Victoria's knickers presented to us, which we actually facilitated the sale of. I think they made about 15 grand at auction. We've had the world's largest pearl, for example. Some really nice memorabilia came to us. Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones, who was a teenager at the time. Some letters were discovered in an attic of his parents' old house, and they were saying, "Mum, I've had my hair cut. I think I'm going to be famous." And it's those sort of things. It's not really about the value of some of these items. It's more about the historical interest, really.
What's the advantage of going to a pawn shop?
Well, we can facilitate a loan relatively quickly. I've already talked about the rate for short-term funding on the larger sums. It's probably cheaper than a bank if you're talking about 1 or 2 or 3, up to maybe 3 months. But the good thing is that we're not doing any credit checks. We're not giving you a bad credit rating if you don't pay it back. We're simply disposing of your assets. You won't end up with a CCJ. You won't end up homeless. The worst thing that can happen is that your goods will be sold. If there's a residue back to you at the end of that process, then we refund you. So if you owe at the end of the loan 100 grand, but the goods make 120,000 through the sale process, then you'll receive £20,000 back. The really good thing about it is really the speed of which it can be done. It can be done within an hour, you know, and some relatively large sums as well.
You know that the stuff coming through your doors isn't stolen goods. You're not handling dodgy stuff.
Well, I think there's probably people out there in the market. I think I would be the last person you would come to if you had some stolen goods. With the credit check, the checks we do in terms of their identity, passports, driving licence, we look at their background, where they live, where they're registered to, and they've got to present us with all that information. They're loaded up on the system, and you know, we carry out our checks thoroughly. To be quite honest with you, it doesn't really happen to us. I mean, I'm not saying we've never had a piece of stolen. We've had 1 or 2 pieces during the 13 years of trading, but it's been very small items that either have been, you know, that have ended up in a robbery or something like that. And they can filter down to you, but they don't generally use us. We're not.
Sorry to interrupt you. Got to let you go. Really fascinating. James Constantinou, founder of Prestige Pawnbrokers. Interesting insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please do stay with us. We'll take a break after that. More from Lancashire as the family of Nicola Bully say she can finally be laid to rest.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to our latest weather update from the Met Office. Well, today we'll see some rain and some sunny spells around as well, but it'll be quite mild. But it's all change as we go through tonight and into the start of Wednesday, as this cold front will make its way south and eastwards through this evening and overnight, marking a change to something just a bit colder for the second half of this week. But back to the start of today, and it's quite a cloudy start for many out there this Tuesday morning. There might be some brighter spells just to the lee of high ground, but it will be dry for many. Rain for some, particularly across the far northwest, so we could see a few heavy bursts through this morning. A freshening breeze here as well, so it's just going to take the edge off those temperatures through today. Though elsewhere, with all the cloud around, it's going to be another mild one, with temperatures widely in the double figures. Now going through this evening and overnight, and this band of cloud and rain, which is that cold front I mentioned earlier, it's going to spread south and eastwards through tonight, bringing some heavier bursts, particularly across northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England through tonight. Ahead of this, it'll be mostly dry but quite cloudy. But behind this, with a freshening breeze and some clearing spells, there might just be a touch of grass frost around to start Wednesday. Now going through the rest of tomorrow, and this band of rain and cloud will make its way south and eastwards, clearing the far southeast around mid to late afternoon. So it could be quite cloudy for most of the day for East Anglia and southeast England. Though behind that cold front, there'll be plenty of sunny spells, though also quite a few blustery showers. So feeling colder behind the band of rain, though ahead of that, temperatures still remaining in the double figures for Wednesday. Looking through to the rest of the week, though, as I say, a colder end of the week to come with overnight frosts more likely, though not much in the way of rain and just a few sunny spells as well. Bye for now.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The family of Nicola Bully says she can finally rest as her body is formally identified.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. It's Tuesday the 21st of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Wherever you're watching or listening from, you're very welcome. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The devastated family of Nicola Bully have described her as the centre of their world after the mum of two's body was recovered from the River Wye. They're now calling for the press and the public to be held accountable for false accusations. Government Minister Maria Caulfield says we need to be more careful in future and not jump to conclusions.
Home Secretary is reviewing how the police handled the case as well. And actually, you know, we do need to learn some lessons collectively about how we speculate about these cases in the future.
The Prime Minister will chair Cabinet today amid warnings of government resignations over his Brexit deal. Yesterday, the Home Secretary became the second minister to warn Rishi Sunak against dropping the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill.
US President Joe Biden has pledged a new $500 million military package to Ukraine during a surprise visit to Kyiv ahead of the first anniversary of the war. It comes as former Prime Ministers Liz Truss and Boris Johnson both call for jets to be sent to the conflict.
2 new earthquakes have struck Turkey overnight, killing at least 3 people and injuring 200 others. Tremors of 6.4 and 5.8 collapsed buildings, with rescuers once again searching for survivors.
And it's Shrove Tuesday today. Do get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email and give us your tips on the perfect pancake.
Yeah, and what time are we pancaking at? What time are we doing that?
8:45.
8:35?
8:45, after the papers.
Yeah. So who have we got? Is it Aldo Zilli?
Aldo Zilli, yeah.
Who is going to be tossing his pancake.
Whetting our appetites.
Lovely. That's the good news. The bad news is he's doing it from his kitchen.
Oh, no. I am actually quite peckish.
It'd
be lovely some pancakes.
Somebody send out for some pancakes.
Someone have mercy on us.
Yeah, indeed. Back after this.
So it is our top story this morning. The family of Nicola Bully say she can finally rest after the mother of two's body was recovered from the River Wye.
In a statement read out by Lancashire Police, the family also said the press and the public have to be held accountable for false accusations and the vilification of friends and loved ones.
Well, let's speak to our national reporter, Thea Jacumba, who joins us this morning from Lancashire. There has been a media storm surrounding this case, hasn't there? The eyes of the country very much on where you are. What now for the family? Because they sounded angry in that statement that they released yesterday.
Yes, for weeks, this case gripped the nation, this community and beyond, as people are wondering where the mother of two, Nicola Bully, was after she dropped off her children at school just a few yards from here and walked along the path, which you may be able to see just on my left, towards that field where her dog and her phone were found. Yesterday afternoon, around 5:30, Lancashire Police held a press conference formally announcing that they had found the mother of two, Nicola Bully, after a sighting on Sunday morning. And they said Nicola's family have been informed and are, of course, devastated. Our thoughts are with them at this time, as well as their loved ones and the wider community. The wider community here, close friends as well, rallied around for weeks and weeks, asking people if they did have any information, to provide that to the police, who are investigating alongside an unprecedented number of agencies and specialists over the last few weeks. And of course, during that press conference, Nicola's family sent a statement to be read out by the police, which said, "We will never be able to comprehend what Nikki had gone through in her last moments, and that will never leave us." And within that press statement, they also criticised members of the press, particularly talking about their privacy, and they want now to be respected as the family begins to grieve. And in that statement, they also said, "Those who genuinely helped and supported us privately, we thank you. The community support in St Michael's, friends, neighbours and strangers have been nothing short of comforting and heartwarming." And they say, "Finally, Nikki, you're no longer a missing person. You have been found. We can let you rest now." But as you say, for weeks there has been interest in this story, but for now the family will be able to grieve following that formal identification.
OK, Theo, thank you very much indeed. Well, for more analysis, we're joined by the former Detective Superintendent of the Metropolitan Police, Shadnam Chowdhury. Good morning to you, Shadnam. We heard Theo there talking about the role of the media, the role of the public in causing upset for the family. What about the role of the police in perhaps failing to give appropriate information at the right time? What was your assessment of it? Do you think that there should be an independent review of them?
I think without a doubt, Lancashire Police will ensure that there's some form of a review, because they will always look at these type of investigations to see what lessons can be learnt by the organisation itself. I think it's really, really important that when police are investigating such matters, that they have to work closely with the family. They also have to take into account the local community, because the vast amount of information and intelligence that they receive come from that very community. So speculation, as you just mentioned earlier, that the way that the family are portrayed and perceived is very, very important. And I think from a police perspective, one of the key issues here is about language, because language matters and it has a much wider impact and on family, community and the wider community. So some of the messaging that came out, people were very upset by. It led to further speculation, and I think that is something that Lancashire Police will look at. I think that is something that local police forces across the UK need to look at, because sometimes the messaging that comes out, particularly when it comes to women, whether they are missing or whether they have been murdered by at the hands of men, the language that sometimes comes out from policing is not helpful to women, and it does not help to build trust. Just a very quick example of that is when a woman is murdered, most police forces will come out and they will say this is an isolated incident, because they want to reassure communities. That doesn't reassure communities, and it's not an isolated incident. Missing people and violence against women and girls is prevalent across society.
Yeah. There obviously, judging by what you're saying, there has to be a reset in the understanding between the police and the public, and what they expect from the public and what the public expect to contribute. I think a lot of people just want to, they want to help, they want to be involved. And then it leads to things like we've got today, where you get someone who is a psychic claiming the worth of actually finding Nicola, and not the Lancashire Police Force. It's not a good look, is it?
Well, speculation and the opportunity to cash in on situations like this happens all the time. The public speculate, police speculate. It's human nature to do that. But when you speculate to the degree that this has happened, the vilification of the family, remember, there are 2 young children in this situation. Two children have lost their mother. They can imagine what they're already going through, the trauma that they're having to go through, the fact that they ended up releasing a statement. I did criticise initially the comments made by police. I stand by that, because I think, as I said earlier, language is very, very important. And when the public speculate, the police have to balance that with the needs of the investigation in order to focus solely on the investigation.
OK, Shabnam Chowdhury, appreciate your take this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Okay. So the Prime Minister will chair a cabinet meeting today amid speculation that people could resign over his Brexit deal if it risks Northern Ireland's place within the UK.
Well, yesterday, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, became the second member of the Cabinet after Penny Mordaunt to warn Rishi Sunak against ditching the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill.
Well, we spoke to the Secretary of State for Women, that's Maria Caulfield, who said a deal with the EU was the Prime Minister's top priority.
Yeah, so the Northern Ireland Protocol has been an issue for a while now. We know that. That's why there isn't an up-and-running assembly in Northern Ireland or an executive, and that's causing problems for people in Northern Ireland, because devolved matters such as health, for example, are not able to be addressed. And so it's really crucial, and that's why the Prime Minister has put this as one of his first priorities, to try and sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol. A deal hasn't been reached. Negotiations are ongoing, and I think, we all agree that we need to resolve this once for all. First and foremost for the people of Northern Ireland, and that's the Prime Minister's priority at the moment.
Well, here with her take, GB News political reporter, we say good morning to Olivia Utley on this one. So it's interesting to hear Maria Caulfield saying a deal with the EU is the Prime Minister's main priority, not a deal with the DUP.
Well, no, and some would say that that wording is very interesting because the way that the DUP have been handled throughout this whole affair has been less than ideal, it seems. So essentially, Rishi Sunak had the deal, the text of the deal, on his desk for a week before he went and spoke to the DUP. And it seems that in that week, there was a sort of vacuum where discontent began to multiply, if you like. And what the problem the DUP has with the deal, what they like, what they're pleased about, and I was in Belfast last week speaking to some DUP members, what they're pleased about is that goods that are coming from Britain to Northern Ireland will no longer be subject to customs checks under this new deal. But what they don't like is that goods made in Northern Ireland will be subject to customs checks on their way into the UK. And, of course, they're worried about the continued jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice over affairs that are happening in Northern Ireland. So they're not yet happy, and it seems as though Rishi Sunak might have made a bit of a diplomatic mistake in waiting so long to speak to them, because in that time, DUP have got more and more anxious about this, and we've seen the ERG, the very influential backbench hardline Brexit Conservative group, making noises against it as well. And since then, we've had Boris Johnson intervene, which is, of course, the very worst thing that Rishi Sunak
And then cabinet ministers like Penny Mordaunt saying that it wasn't entirely unhelpful for him to intervene, and Suella Braverman hinting that the protocol bill must not be undermined. So that leaves Rishi Sunak in a very difficult position because he's risking some sort of civil war within his own party. Labour saying that he's putting party before country.
Yes, I mean, he's in a very awkward position with his party, but it seems as though he will do everything he can to try and get this deal over the line, even if his party don't like it. But yes, I think one issue is that he was concerned with negotiating with the EU, and he did that almost entirely in secret, not really letting his own backbench MPs know. And so now he's having to try and overcompensate for that, and is spending the last few days in Westminster speaking to MPs, going through the deal line by line with them, going through the deal with DUP. But his focus has been on Westminster, while Chris Heaton-Harris, the Northern Ireland Secretary, and James Cleverly have been talking to the DUP. So from an outsider's perspective, it does look a bit as though all Rishi Sunak is concerned about is his own backbench Tory MPs, which is a powerful campaigning line for Labour.
And do you think we'll see it this week?
My instinct is no, but there are plenty who think that we will. So it's hanging in the balance now. It's almost anyone's guess.
OK, good to know. Thanks, Olivia Utley.
30 minutes past 8 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise.
The government has recorded a monthly surplus of £5.4 billion last month, despite substantial spending on energy support schemes and one-off payments to the EU. The Office for National Statistics says payments to energy suppliers and households hit roughly £9.9 billion in January because of rising energy bills. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says debt is still at the highest levels since the 60s, but it's crucial to reduce the amount spent on debt interest to protect our public services.
A new study shows the UK has spent more than £50 billion extra on gas since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit says the UK paid more for wholesale gas last year than in a typical pre-pandemic year.
Supermarkets are facing a shortage of tomatoes after bad weather in Europe and Africa has disrupted supplies. In Morocco, heavy rain, flooding and cancelled ferries have affected exports for the past 3 to 4 weeks. And in Spain, the winter tomato crop has also been badly affected by poor weather.
The American President Joe Biden has promised further military aid for Ukraine worth £415 million during a surprise visit to Kyiv ahead of the first anniversary of the war.
His visit comes as former Prime Minister Liz Truss joined Boris Johnson in calling for the UK to send jets to the conflict.
We need to do all we can as fast as we can. My view is that does include fighter jets, and I can't wait to see the fighter jets in Ukraine to help those brave Ukrainians.
We're joined now by the former head of the British Army, Lord Richard Dannett. Lord Dannett, good morning to you.
Eamonn, good morning.
Liz Truss, she makes the call. Boris Johnson's made the call. They must know it's not a simple matter of saying, oi, fly a couple of jets over there.
You're absolutely right. I mean, in theory, just in the same way that it's been decided now to send quite a large number of main battle tanks, in addition to all the other equipment that's been sent and is being sent to Ukraine, that the call is there for fast jets. That's an understandable call, but it is complicated. I think it's much more practical for countries that own and operate F-16s. They are a little bit more user-friendly, if you like, than the Typhoon aircraft that the UK operates and the F-35s that we have a relatively small number of that we're operating off our aircraft carriers. So, yes, it's a reasonable call to put pressure on countries to give some fast jets, but it's not going to happen quickly. And I think that the Ukrainians will be, once they've seen off the Russian new offensive, which is going to happen sometime in the next few weeks. But most analysts, on the basis of what we've seen so far, their new attack will almost invariably fail, and fail with a tremendous number of Russian casualties. That's the moment for the Ukrainians to launch their counter-offensive. And I think so long as they've got the main battle tanks, the armoured infantry fighting vehicles, the self-propelled artillery, they have a very good chance, with or without additional fast jets, and I think it'll be without, that they can mount a successful counter-offensive and really knock the Russians back.
It's interesting, hearing Boris Johnson and Liz Truss calling for these jets, seeing President Biden pledging $500 million worth of military support to Ukraine. It really brings defence spending back into the spotlight once again, not least with reports that perhaps China could end up funding Russia in all of this. I was reading yesterday that Sir Patrick Sanders, he's a top general, he's the chief of the General Staff, he might quit if forces aren't adequately funded in the budget next month. Is that what you're hearing?
I read those reports as well. General Patrick believes passionately in the army. He's a great army leader, but he's experiencing a number of the pressures that I experienced in 2006, 2007, at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns, when we had to make the case to government to get more resources to do the job. And he's in exactly that position now. When I talked about possibly resigning myself, my number two said, well, look, Richard, if you resign, I've got all the same problems to deal with tomorrow. And I think that's very much the situation that General Patrick would be in. If he was to go, then the problems still remain. Now, what he must do, and I know this is what he is doing, is making the case, along with Ben Wallace, to central government that this is the moment that we need to spend more on defence. And this is the moment we need to spend more on our land forces in particular, and that's principally the army. Because what this brutal land war in Europe has shown is that this kind of chin-to-chin, toe-to-toe bloody fighting is not a thing of history, it's not a thing of the past, it's today's issue as well. Yes, we've got to spend more money on cyber and space and modern technologies, but I'm afraid some of the old technologies, some of the old ways of warfare are still there. So that's what General Patrick is arguing for, is what Ben Wallace is arguing for, and frankly, those of us who've got a chance to put our voices into the ring, we will argue for as well.
Lord Dannett, as we fast approach this one-year anniversary since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, what way do you see things going in the next week or so?
Well, the next week or so, probably not an awful lot's going to happen. That's a bit of a dangerous thing for me now to have just said that. But the next major event that we will see is the long-anticipated Russian fresh offensive, when they throw into battle a large number of those that they recently conscripted, drafted, recruited, trained, only partially trained. We will see mass infantry attacks supported by widespread artillery support, and all the evidence shows that these will be repulsed in a very bloody fashion. When that offensive has died down, at some point after that, whether it's in the spring, late spring, early summer, when the Ukrainians have taken possession of the additional equipment, particularly main battle tanks and the like that we're promising them, when they've got those equipments in their hands, they're trained sufficiently to use them, that's when we'll see them mount a counteroffensive. And I think this is a really important point. Russian morale must be very, very low at the present moment. If you strike an army hard with deft blows, many of those soldiers will think we've lost. And when soldiers think they've lost, an army has lost. They don't have to be defeated in detail everywhere on the battlefield. But once psychologically the Russians are gone, then the Russian military will collapse. And that's what Ukraine has got to press for. And that's why we've got to support them to make those decisive blows to really break the back of the Russian army, break the back of the morale of the Russian soldier.
Meanwhile, we've got this bizarre situation when we're looking at the first anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine, at the same time as the Foreign Secretary flying out to New York for the UN Security Council, at which Russia and indeed China will both have seats. I mean, what do you make of the role of the UN Security Council in 2023?
Well, Isabel, I mean, that's the architecture that we've grown up with since the United Nations was formed after the Second World War. There are 5 permanent members of the Security Council, of which you quite rightly say Russia and China are 2. United States, Britain and France are the others. Bear in mind, these are the winners, if you like, of the Second World War. That's how the UN Security Council was set up. Yes, there are rotating members, other countries that come on from time to time. It is bizarre. It also means that when you've got something sensitive like this, if the Security Council is minded to pass a resolution, you can absolutely guarantee that the Russians and the Chinese will veto it. So on that basis, it's stymied. Then begs the wider question, well, should we be reorganizing, redesigning our international security structures? Well, on one hand, you could say yes, but on the other hand, you then say, well, where do we start? What's it going to look like in the future? So I think we have to take the status quo and work with it. Bear in mind, going back in history now, in 1956, when Britain and France attacked Egypt over the Suez Canal, the Security Council was stymied, but the General Assembly passed a whole raft of resolutions, which effectively meant Britain and France had to stop that war. So the General Assembly, it can be at times quite a powerful voice in its own right.
Okay.
Lord Richard Dannett is a former head of the British Army. We thank you for your time and your analysis this morning. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eamonn. Thanks, Isabel.
Well, we'll take a break there. After that, find out about Labour's plan to boost homegrown food production as Keir Starmer tells farmers, you deserve better.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain.
Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
26 minutes past 8 o'clock. This is Breakfast on GB News. Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel, Webster.
At 8:45, we will be whetting your appetite this morning, speaking to the celebrity chef, Aldo Zilli. He'll be giving us his tips for the ultimate pancake, and he'll also show us how to execute the all-important perfect flip.
And the former Hollyoaks actor Davinia Taylor lost 3 stone and transformed her
more
life.
Than 3 stone there.
Well, her
She's
body
lost
and her life.
Nothing of her.
Yeah, it's called biohacking. Sounds painful, but it involves putting... it sounds disgusting. It involves putting butter in your coffee.
Oh, no,
right?
thanks.
She's going to be talking
I'd
about
rather have
that.
black coffee.
You sort of think by taking the butter out of your coffee, you might end up like the picture on the right as opposed to the picture on the left.
Well,
no.
I suppose this sounds a bit like a high-fat diet, you know, one of those Atkins or whatever it is, biohack. There's always a new way of doing it, but it always boils down to the same thing of carbs are the enemy.
Okay, okay. So listen, if you let us know, maybe you've got a pancake diet, let us know. Get in touch this morning.
2 is the perfect number.
gbnews.uk. OK, we're going to talk about farmers, a specialist subject of mine. The Labour leader now is telling farmers they deserve better. Too right, they do. And called for a new way of governing ahead of a speech. This is at the National Farmers Union, the NFU conference in Birmingham later today.
He's going to stress the importance of supporting homegrown produce. Well, let's speak to Shadow Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Secretary Jim McMahon, who joins us this morning. It's so interesting to see what Labour comes out talking to us about in the last few weeks. We've had the party of law and order. We've had them trying to be the party of business. Labour's now trying to be the party of agriculture. That's a new one on me.
Well, the connection with all that, of course, is that we are the party of business, we are the party of law and order, and that speaks right to the heart of farming. Farmers are businesses, and their businesses are struggling at the moment. They have a government who don't have a long-term plan for our food security, and that means that every month they're faced with sticking plaster type politics of short-term answers that don't address the long-term financial stability of our farms. And Labour recognises that in order to have national security, we need food security, and for food security to be absolutely embedded, we need farms that are financially viable, that are supported, and where nature, wildlife and farming go hand in hand.
Jim, you know who's done more for farming in the past year than any politician? Jeremy Clarkson on Clarkson's farm. Have you been watching it? Well, you'll have seen.
Well,
then...
he's done a lot for fast cars as well, Jeremy Clarkson, yeah. Yeah, he moved his attention to tractors now. No, he's done a very good job of raising the profile of farms, absolutely.
Yeah, and he shows the thing about farming, how hard it is to make a living and how burdened farmers are with bureaucracy. You know, how sympathetic are you to that, and what would you be doing about that?
Well, I think we need to separate out rules and regulations that are there for our collective protection, and I would say that most farmers really embrace that. They like that Britain has the highest animal welfare standards, the highest environmental standards, that we're good custodians of the natural environment. They like that and they embrace it. Where they get frustrated, though, is where government don't speak with one voice, where they get passed from pillar to post from one government official to the other. You know, you speak to one person about veterinary issues on one side, you speak to another department on farming payments on the other, you speak to another on licensing or planning issues, and in the midst of all that, farmers have just got a business to run. They're trying to put food in our supermarkets and keep the business afloat, and they find it very frustrating the government is so complex and they don't speak with us a single voice. Now, we've been hearing that in the visits that we've been carrying out. Just in the last couple of weeks, I've been to Devon, I've been to Lancashire, where we're meeting farmers, and they are absolutely clear that they want a government that's on their side, a government that has a long-term plan, and that's why Keir's going to Birmingham today. Of course, to set that out, but also to say thank you, because, listen, we don't have food security without secure farmers, and they've done a fantastic job in very difficult circumstances to keep the nation fed.
It'll be a tough crowd for Sir Keir Starmer at the NFU conference in Birmingham today. But I'm really interested. One of the things he's going to be outlining is a pledge that a Labour government would say at least half the food the public sector buys will be locally produced or highly sustainable, as the party commits to backing homegrown food. That sounds extremely expensive, if laudable.
It's absolutely affordable, because what we see in the public sector, in the NHS, in the Ministry of Defence, in social care, in education, is actually we waste 40% of all food that we purchase in the public sector. If we can reduce the amount of food that we waste, we free up the headroom to buy better quality domestic produce here that supports British farmers. It's a win-win.
Now, Jim, supermarkets, friend or foe to the farmer?
Well, I think a farmer would say it depends what day it is. On day one, they can be the best friend of the farmer. On day two, they can be quite challenging. Supermarkets have a very difficult job. They've got to balance the cost of buying in goods and the pressures that their customers face with the cost of living crisis. And I don't think any supermarket is finding it particularly easy at the moment. But I would just say in the week that farmers meet in Birmingham, our focus is on farmers, on the producers that keep the nation fed. And so let's celebrate them, but let's also, go beyond the warm words and have real policies that have a long-term plan for our food security to really back our farmers instead of this sticking plaster temporary politics that we see.
Yeah, but what I'm really getting at is I don't know how you can promise food security if supermarkets are your main client, if they are your shop window, when they're putting the squeeze on farmers so often. So it's all just talk, it's all hot air saying local food for local people, because as Isabel is alluding to there, it's an expensive dream.
Well, this might be an unusual situation, Eamonn, where farmers actually would welcome some hot air. The reason why you haven't got tomatoes on the supermarket shelves is because the greenhouses aren't turned on. Why? Because the cost of energy is so high. The cost pressures that farmers are facing isn't the supermarkets. They have their own pressures to deal with, and of course there will be tensions. It's because they have a labour shortage. It's because the cost of food and feed has gone up, the cost of fertiliser has gone up, the cost of energy has gone up, the cost of transportation has gone up. They're the pressures that farmers face, and when they look to the government here in Parliament, the government are missing in action.
Listen, one final thought before you go. Just your guess is as good as ours if behind you in that building later today there'll be a vote on the Northern Ireland protocol. We don't yet know. We spoke to Maria Caulfield for the government about that this morning, about Labour's point that Rishi Sunak is putting party before country and that Labour would vote for this deal. She said, hang on a minute, Labour's playing politics in all of this. They don't even know what's in the deal and they say they'll approve it. What do you say to that?
Well, we've got to trust that through the negotiations there has been a settlement that of course has compromise in it, but ultimately is practical and can be worked. You know, there is no point in having an agreement that doesn't work in practice, that doesn't allow the trade of goods across the border. We need to make sure that those are in place and it can be workable in practice. And so far, all we hear from the government isn't the practicalities of how it will work. We just hear the squabbling taking place in this place where the Conservatives are in their own internal disputes instead of looking at the national interest. And what Labour's saying is it's time to put the country first, have an agreement, of course, that can work in practice and get it through so that the people of Northern Ireland have stability.
OK, Jim McMahon is the Shadow Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, ahead of Sir Keir Starmer addressing the National Union of Farmers in Birmingham later today. Thanks for your time, Jim. Thank you very much indeed. We'll take a break. Don't go anywhere. After that, we're going to go through the newspapers. Amy Cameron and Martin Dobney with those. They're going to be discussing the pros and cons of a 4-day working week.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
22 minutes, actually, it's coming up to 21 minutes.
I'm always impressed by your reverse mathematics.
Yeah.
I see 8:38 and I don't see 22 minutes to the hour, and I'd be going, how many
I
minutes?
just make it up.
This is why I'm in words and not numbers. Anyway, we're doing the papers now, joined by the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney and the environmental campaigner and surprisingly qualified vet Eamonn was unaware of.
Very impressed.
Amy Cameron.
Technically, you could be calling me Dr. Amy Cameron. We're allowed to call ourselves doctors now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And we were just discussing farming with the Labour Party, and you gave us an unknown fact about yourself. Please do share it. Come on. It's entertainment as well as information on this show.
OK, fine. Yes, I
Were you talking to me?
No, to Amy, but I was wondering if that look meant please don't divulge, because it was rather graphic. Do we want to know or not?
Yeah, I think we do.
Panel think? Go on then.
I teased it.
I was. So to check whether or not a cow is pregnant, that's what you're doing with the rectal exam, the legendary rectal exam. Yeah. I once did more than 100 rectal exams in a morning.
Dear.
What a day.
I always include that in, you know, like 2 truths and a lie.
Yeah.
And you're getting... I'm a multi-talented woman, guys. What can I say?
Have you ever had, I mean, you've obviously been involved in birthings.
Yes.
Have you ever had to use one of those jacks? You know, they use a jack, you know, you put
to
the
plumb it.
cord around the legs.
Oh, on the cows.
I've seen one being used.
Brutal,
I haven't
isn't it?
used one. They are brutal.
Yeah. Gosh,
Farming's a brutal world. I grew up in a rural area, so I was always quite sort of farming associated. But being a rural
your family
vet,
farmers?
No, but we live in a sort of rural place. Lots of family friends are. But being like an agricultural vet is tough.
Called out at any hour of the day.
It's a really tough life. It's partly because farmers are under so much pressure.
Yes.
So you're going into an incredibly fraught environment already and often not delivering good news. So, yeah, they struggle. They struggle to retain farm vets.
Anyway, apparently Labour think it'll all be easy. You just sell your potatoes locally and you'll get top dollar for them and everything.
We've solved it. We're just going to grow our own tomatoes on the windowsill.
I mean, what will the supermarkets say about that? They won't like that. And then governments, they say, diversify. Don't have cows. Don't have all methane in the air. Diversify. Give yourself an Airbnb. Oh, we'll not give you planning permission for that because there's badgers living nearby and we've got to preserve the badgers. And
you know what else farmers want, though, that they can't get planning permission for?
What?
Drum roll, please. Onshore wind. Renewables was a big source of financial diversification for farmers, and they had that economic lifeline cut off when they changed all the regulations.
They should channel all the hot air coming in from environmentalists. That would power the nation.
Well, let's get into politics. Will there be much hot air around the cabinet table today? The Times, the front page of the Times say Brexit deal may trigger resignations, the Prime Minister's told.
I wanted just to focus on why sovereignty is so important and always has been to the DUP and to Brexiteers, and I think to the future of the United Kingdom. It's something that seems to be ephemeral or something that should be compromised in the eyes of the Labour Party, of people who voted to remain, and certainly I want to explain why that isn't the case. Just say Scotland left the United Kingdom. Would the Scottish Government accept Westminster determining its customs policy? Would they determine Westminster deciding anything at all about how the country was run? Of course they would not. If the Labour Party gets swept into power next time, would they accept the Conservatives still, for example, ruling over certain parts of legislation? No, they would not, because democratically we voted for change and for that lot to go in its entirety. That never happened with Northern Ireland, and that is the sticking point. The point is this. The reason you quite correctly brought up with the farming minister why are Labour going to vote for a deal without even seeing it is because they know that closer alignment with the European Union in the future would be possible if this door was left open with the ECJ having insight and oversight into the rules of Northern Ireland. And Sinn Féin would continue to have MEPs in Brussels at the table to change future law which would affect Northern Ireland, which would not be a member. It's not something that's up for negotiation or grabs.
And for the hardline Brexiteers and people who, as you would so passionately advocate in favour of sovereignty, any kind of guarantees that the ECJ would not encroach into Northern Ireland politics is not not enough. But that, my understanding is that might be one of the conditions that the ECJ say, look, we're not going to get involved.
I think just to pick up on that point, but also crucially the point that Martin made about whether or not this was a democratic mandate, I think it's really important to remember that the majority of Northern Irish voters voted to remain. The DUP do not represent Northern Irish voters. There is a majority in Stormont who back the Northern Ireland Protocol. There is a majority of Irish voters who back the Northern Ireland Protocol. DUP are holding Northern Ireland to ransom during a period when that country's healthcare system, for example, is absolutely crippled. They have been unable to pass legislation
say the same about the SNP
for
in Scotland.
months. No, you can't, because their parliament exists and it is functioning. Northern Ireland do not have a functioning executive, to the point that the Westminster government have had to make unilateral decisions. I'm not arguing around the ECJ issue. It's not my area of expertise, but I think it's just really important to remember that this is not representative of Northern Irish voters.
For somebody who believes, say, for example, in Scottish independence, would Scotland accept Westminster having continued says in how Scotland was governed post-independence? Would they heckers like? And that's precisely what this is about. Why should Northern Ireland bow to Brussels when, irrespective of the population, it's part of the United Kingdom? The UK voted to leave. That's why the DUP will not change on this. They should not change on this. And if Rishi comes back with a watered-down deal that sells out Northern Ireland, he'll be betraying Brexit, and it will be the death of his parliamentary career.
It's just wild to me, Martin, that in the same sentence you can say irrespective of the population while making an argument about democratic process,
because it's part of the United Kingdom. We didn't vote as territories, we voted as a UK.
Northern Irish voters specifically understood the complexity of what Brexit would mean for them and the wider island of Ireland. I think, unfortunately, far too many politicians did not grapple with this in advance. And I think what we need to see is pragmatic solutions here. And it feels like that's what, heaven forbid I back Rishi Sunak on something, but it does feel like this compromise deal is essential, both for Northern Ireland, but also for Britain, which is facing
there's no surprise that you, as a Remainer, support compromise, because the compromise is in favour of ratcheting power back to Brussels. That's why Labour want to vote for this deal.
Well, we will probably never get you two to agree on this, so rather than dominate the entire paper section on it, shall we look at another story?
Well, there's two stories that join up, Eamonn.
Yes.
Financial Times and The Guardian, and they're both employment stories. And the first one is 4-day working week trial converts most people who take part in it, and the other one is help with childcare and health needed to boost the workforce.
Yeah, I think both of these stories are super linked, actually. So if we start with the Financial Times one, this is the story that the companies that have been taking part in a 4-day working week, more than 9 out of the 10 of them plan to continue on the basis of massive increases in profit and productivity. So I think it says here that there was around a 30% increase in profit seen in some of the participating businesses, as well as increases in recruitment and decreases in staff loss. I think what we are seeing at the moment, as we know, is this phenomenal workforce shortage, right? And there's been a big focus on early retirement, but as I suspect you covered yesterday, that is now proving to not be the case. Actually, early retirement figures are lower than they were before the pandemic. What we are seeing is a real difficulty of people getting back into work, for example, if they have children, or because they have caring responsibilities, or they have health issues which prevent them from working in the kind of traditional, like 5 days a week, tied to your desk vibe. I think if we want to free up new, more productive workforces, building in more flex... Well, you don't have to tell me twice, I've got none.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'll just say that used to be like the way it was done. That was the old-fashioned way. Can you afford children or not? But now it's just like it's your right to have children. Everybody can just breed all around the place.
I think it
we
is
have a declining birth rate, don't we?
Yeah, and also I don't think that I think there are other more pragmatic and positive solutions to that, right? So we in Britain we have phenomenally low productivity for phenomenally high working hours. That's just an objective fact. Surely the time calls for some ambitious policy making, whether that be around childcare or working week structures. I work a 4-day week, and I'm a huge advocate for it.
What do you do on the day that you don't work?
On the day I don't work?
Yeah.
So this is going to sound very pious, but I'm on a number of charity boards.
Yes.
Eamonn. So I do lots of volunteering.
So you're working.
I do lots of volunteering with my time because I don't have kids.
We're going to a man who works at home now. Guys, thank you very much indeed for all your contributions this morning.
Pancake time, sorry, you've been trumped by a flipping pancake.
We're going to do that. So it is Shrove Tuesday today, Pancake Tuesday. How do you make that pancake? More importantly, how do you get the flip just right? Well, we go live by satellite to the home, working from home today, celebrity chef Aldo Zilli with the answer. Aldo, good morning to you.
Buongiorno, beautiful people. How are you?
Very good, my friend. Are your Italian pancakes different than our British pancakes?
We have crepes, which are very, very thin. Look, they're very thin. So my mum used to actually make, she used to make pancake lasagna with these. Can you see the flip?
That's very good
Beautiful.
flipping. What was in your pancake lasagna then? Presumably not mincemeat.
Okay, no, right. I've got loads of different ones here. So I'm going to start showing you the ones I've already made. So I've got a filling here with ricotta cheese and vegetables, which we're going to roll. We're going to roll like this, and then we're going to put some tomato sauce on top and cream, and we're going to put it in the oven with some Parmesan cheese on top, and that's your savory pancake for the day, okay? If you're on a budget, this is a fantastic recipe. Absolutely amazing. Then we've got these ones here. I'm just going to show you all of them. These ones here are pancake tagliolini. Okay, so it's like a pasta. You roll them, you cut them like a pasta tagliolini or tagliatelle, and then you deep fry them, and then you put them on top of some strawberries or ice cream, and you drop a little sugar on top, and that is the best dessert you will ever have.
Wow.
Then we have these here. We have a stack here of American pancakes, and they have a little bit of honey and a little bit of truffle. I love truffle, so I eat it for breakfast, for dinner, and for whatever it is. And then we've got some raspberries inside, we've got some blueberries on top, some strawberries, and then just to finish off, a little indulgence of Nutella. Guarda qui, che bello.
What have you done to the Nutella to make it runny? Have you popped that in the microwave, or have you added some truffle oil, or what have you done?
No, the Nutella is runny because it's just been sitting on a little bain-marie.
Oh,
Yeah?
OK, so you warmed it up, on a bain-marie.
Okay, so this is the chocolate one, chocolate pancake. You just mix the chocolate with the flour and the egg and all the ingredients. And this is the old crêpe Suzette. Do we remember this in the 80s? Eamonn, do you remember these?
Lovely. Set fire to it.
The crêpe Suzette.
Gorgeous. Oh no, your pancake mountain just collapsed in front of us there.
Oh, stop it! Get out of this.
Oh, unbelievable. I hope you've got lots of hungry people around you, because that's a lot of pancake in Casa Zilli this morning.
Let me tell you, my children are loving this. They're behind the camera. They haven't even gone to school yet. They're on their way, though.
Oh, lucky them.
What about your mix for your pancake itself? I mean, would you care to share that with people?
Okay, well, I do a very simple mix, okay? The flour, any flour, I mean, you can use, I've used 00 flour because I've got that in my kitchen, but you can use just plain flour, milk and egg. Mix it all together with some sugar if you're making sweet, if you're making savory, a little bit of salt, and that's it. And then a little bit of butter in the pan. And the mix is actually right here. Okay, I'll show you. This is the mix. And the consistency, when you're making this mix, needs to be quite, not thick, but quite not too runny, okay? Basically, this is how you test it. You put your finger in it, and if it sticks to the finger, it's good to go.
Yeah. I also noticed when you were flipping, you're tossing your pancake there, you had a very shallow pan, very wide and very, very shallow.
This is a pancake pan, available in every single supermarket, and it's peanuts to buy, and it's a really good one to keep in the cupboard because it's not like turkey once a year. Pancake is for every day. You can have pancakes as I've shown you. They're all different ones you can make. Why just have pancakes on Shrove Tuesday?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gosh, you've made me hungry with that. And I love you can have multiple courses, and it's so simple, isn't it?
Multiple courses. Would you be a savoury or a sweet man, Aldo?
I am a bit of both, Eamonn, but I tend to steer against sweet around. But now, because I'm doing this health sort of new Aldo Zilli, I don't know whether you've noticed how well I look and how trim I am.
We can hardly see you. Nothing left of you. Nothing left. Aldo, we've got to go. Thanks for a flipping good time this morning. Really enjoyed that.
I was assuming you liked lemon and sugar with that shirt. Really lovely. That's really got me in the mood.
For a bit of lemon and sugar.
Yeah,
very good.
as you'd say.
Look, stay right there. After the break, we're talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol.
As a Debbie Downer. That's with the Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker, which always makes light of everything. We will see you after this short break.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Well, today we'll see some rain and some sunny spells around as well, but it'll be quite mild. But it's all change as we go through tonight and into the start of Wednesday, as this cold front will make its way south and eastwards through this evening and overnight, marking a change to something just a bit colder for the second half of this week. But back to the start of today, and it's quite a cloudy start for many out there this Tuesday morning. There might be some brighter spells just to the lee of high ground, but it will be dry for many. Rain for some, particularly across the far northwest, so we could see a few heavy bursts through this morning. A freshening breeze here as well, so it's just going to take the edge off those temperatures through today. Though elsewhere, with all the cloud around, it's going to be another mild one, with temperatures widely in the double figures. Now going through this evening and overnight, and this band of cloud and rain, which is that cold front I mentioned earlier, it's going to spread south and eastwards through tonight, bringing some heavier bursts, particularly across northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England through tonight. Ahead of this, it'll be mostly dry but quite cloudy, but behind this, with a freshening breeze and some clearing spells, there might just be a touch of grass frost around to start Wednesday. Now going through the rest of tomorrow, and this band of rain and cloud will make its way south and eastwards, clearing the far southeast around mid to late afternoon. So it could be quite cloudy for most of the day for East Anglia and southeast England. Though behind that cold front, there'll be plenty of sunny spells, though also quite a few blustery showers. So feeling colder behind the band of rain, though ahead of that, temperatures still remaining in the double figures for Wednesday. Looking through to the rest of the week, though, as I say, a colder end of the week to come with overnight frosts more likely, though not much in the way of rain and just a few sunny spells as well. Bye for now.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
The family of Nicola Bully say she can finally rest as her body is formally identified.
Hello, very good to see you. 9 o'clock is the time. It is Tuesday, the 21st of February. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The devastated family of Nicola Bully have described her as the centre of their world after the mum of two's body was recovered from the River Wye. They're now calling for the press and the public to be held accountable for false accusations. Government Minister Maria Caulfield told us this morning we need to be more careful in future to not jump to conclusions.
Home Secretary is reviewing how the police handled the case as well. And actually, you know, we do need to learn some lessons collectively about how we speculate about these cases in the future.
The Prime Minister will chair Cabinet today amid warnings of government resignations over his Brexit deal. Yesterday, the Home Secretary became the second minister to warn Rishi Sunak against dropping the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill.
American President Joe Biden's pledged a new $500 million military package to Ukraine during a surprise visit to Kyiv ahead of the first anniversary of the war. It comes as former Prime Ministers Liz Truss and Boris Johnson call for jets to be sent to the conflict.
2 new earthquakes have struck Turkey overnight, killing at least 3 people and injuring over 200. Tremors reaching 6.4 collapsed buildings, with rescuers once again searching for people trapped beneath rubble.
And it's Shrove Tuesday today. Get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email and give us your tips on the perfect pancake and perhaps your assessment of Aldo Zilli there with some of his fabulous suggestions.
Yeah.
Really original.
Well, they were very nice, what we saw there. Not really original, but I just looked at
You
that.
like an American pancake, the sort of thick
No, I like that.
Oh,
I like that
the first one.
bacon. I like that
Oh,
bacon.
a bit of bacon on
that
there.
They had on there, or they, yeah.
So.
Quite nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get on with this show and then we'll have time to eat pancakes.
Yeah.
afterwards. And get in touch with us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So it is still our top story this morning. The family of Nicola Bully say she can finally rest after the mum of two's body was recovered from the River Wye.
So Lancashire Police read out a statement on behalf of the family, and they also said the press and the public have to be held accountable for false accusations and the vilification of friends and loved ones.
Well, earlier we spoke to former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley, who said the force should have learnt lessons from Nicola Bully's death.
The police, when the dust settles,
are going to have to take a very long, hard look at how they've conducted all of this, not only the investigation, but very much the communication. And I hope that the wider British police take some lessons from all of this, because quite frankly, if you get the messaging wrong and people don't believe you, they're not going to trust your investigations. And that, I think, is part of the reason why so many people turned up at St Michael's on Wye.
Political commentator and social observer Norman Baker joins us now to talk through the news stories of this this half hour. And I think all of us are sad. We're very, very sad at the inevitability of what's happened to Nicola Bully. But the family really are feeling this. They're quite angry about this.
Well, they are, and I think they asked for privacy, and I think a couple of news channels, Sky and ITV, they referred to, doorstepped them when it really wasn't appropriate. But I'm also thinking, this is from my time as a Home Office Minister, because I dealt with this issue, there are lots of people who go missing. And while I'm very sorry for Nicola Bully's family, I'm also very sorry for those who don't get the coverage that she's had. And particularly when children go missing.
What was the difference here? What was the difference?
I don't know what the difference was, Eamonn, and maybe it's just simply caught the imagination. But either way, there are lots of... I used to go to an annual ceremony at St Martin's in the Field with parents whose children disappeared and no idea where they were. And it's heartbreaking to see them years and years on not knowing whether they're even alive or not.
At least the family have that resolution.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's not much comfort, really, at the end of this. But the lessons, and we're going to go to our man on the scene very, very shortly, but the police, they just didn't get this right from the start, did they?
No, there was some suggestion that the family wanted some information released. I don't quite know if that's true or not, or why they would want it released. But, I mean, nobody comes out of this with very much glory, to be honest with you.
No, OK. Let's go to Theo Chikumba, our national reporter, who is there in Lancashire this morning to bring us the mood in the town today.
Good morning. Well, the mood here is subdued. It's quieter than it has been over the last few weeks as police were investigating, looking for the missing mother of two, Nicola Bully. On Sunday, we understand someone contacted the police around 11:30 in the morning after seeing what they believed was a body in the River Wye. And then yesterday, the police formally announced that it was indeed Nicola Bully's body, and subsequently have been supporting the family since then. And during that press conference, they did say we are able to confirm that it was Nicola Bully's body in the River Wye, and they say Nicola's family has been informed and is going to be supported. And of course, we also heard from Nicola's family during that conference as well, in a statement given to them, given to the police by them, saying, finally, Nikki, you're no longer a missing person, you have been found, we can let you rest now.
OK, Theo, thank you very much indeed. We interrupt you and go straight to pictures coming out of Russia this morning as President Putin makes a rare address to both houses of parliament in Moscow. This is ahead of the one-year anniversary of his invasion of Ukraine, which takes place on Friday. Norman's still here with us in the studio. Really interesting, the timing of this, just 24 hours after President Biden's surprise visit to Kyiv. And we understand Moscow was tipped off about that by the US in case if there was any sort of accidental mishap. But Putin is saying we're in a difficult time prior to the historical events at the moment.
Well, I mean, I imagine that Biden actually went deliberately ahead of the speech from Putin in order to get an advantage on him, steal a march on him. This is an annual address from President Putin to the assembled, dummies really, who will always agree with him in the Russian parliament. It'll be interesting to see what he says, because quite clearly when you invaded Ukraine, he thought the whole thing would be over in a week, and now he's found himself deep in the mire with no way of getting out. So it's a difficult situation, but for us
it's
in the West...
interesting the way that picture's framed there. Massive stage, he's there, a man alone, and in many ways he is a man alone, isn't he?
Well, he is, but there's also something rather, dare I say, Hitleresque about that stage, where there's a huge stage with one person on it and there's grandeur behind him. And you get that with dictators. You've had it in the 1930s in Germany, you see it with Xi Jinping as well, and you see it with Putin. You almost... I remember a Private Eye article once which made fun of the Soviet Union Brezhnev, who was in charge at the time, when Brezhnev was saying in the speech, "Wake up and start clapping." You can imagine Putin almost saying that to his audience there today.
Yeah, there are a few lines coming through on wires of what he's been saying. He's still describing the invasion as a special military operation, and he says he will decide those tasks step by step. We must be prepared, he's saying, for a different scenario. We did everything possible to resolve the Donbass problem peacefully.
Well, I mean, he's going to be sabre-rattling in front of that audience. He has to be, really. And he's been threatening to use nuclear weapons and everything else. He hasn't done so. I don't think he ever will, actually, because the consequences for Russia and for the world will be so catastrophic that I think it's a step even he wouldn't take. So he's in a difficult situation. This special military operation, so-called, I mean, that's a threadbare term to use. Everybody knows what it is. It's an invasion of a peaceful country. And calling Zelensky a Nazi when actually Zelensky's a Jew is just unbelievable.
What about the intervention of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss? We saw Liz Truss making her first speech from the backbenches since she became a minister in 2012. Very easy to make these calls for fighter jets, isn't it? That's what Lord Richard Dannatt was saying this morning.
Well, I think that Liz Truss and Boris Johnson are playing to the gallery, and Boris Johnson in particular, he did actually have a commitment to Ukraine when he was Prime Minister. Let's be fair about that. But he's now seeking to keep himself in the headlines and make sure that he's in a position to take over from Rishi Sunak as and when the opportunity arises, which is why he's meddling around in Northern Ireland in a way that's quite disgraceful. And as George Osborne, the former Chancellor, said yesterday, this is about his ambition to get back into number 10, not about Northern Ireland.
Is that the way you see it? I mean, I think a lot of people in Northern Ireland don't see his interest in Northern Ireland. There's something else afoot here.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, he's meddling. The deal that was struck in Northern Ireland was struck by him. Let's remember that. He's now trying to undermine it. He's used an opportunity to get on the side with the Brexiteers in the Tory party. He thinks Sunak might be vulnerable after the local elections, and he's positioning himself to get back in, the prince over the water, to come back. It's a quite disgraceful situation. It's purely opportunism.
Right, Norman. So you're Sunak, right? You're a new Prime Minister. You listen to Liz Truss, who bankrupt the country, talking about sending out. We'd love to send jets, Liz, but there's no money left to send any because of you. But so basically, Sunak's sitting there around the cabinet table today. He's got Suella Braverman. He's got who else?
Penny Mordaunt.
Yeah, and they're well, I was going to say backstabbing. They're front stabbing, aren't they? What's the tactic then? You know, if you're a football manager, as soon as you become or try and challenge the boss, you're out the door.
Yes, exactly.
It's slightly different in politics, though, isn't it?
Not necessarily, because look, we the Lib Dems actually advised David Cameron back in 2010. These people on the far Brexiteer wing will never compromise at all on anything. So there's no point trying to do a deal with them in a normal way. So you should just face them down. And what Sunak should do, which will cause some ructions in the short term, is say, back me or sack me. If you don't want to be here, out the cabinet, we'll find somebody else. You should get rid of them. And the same with the DUP, actually. How can the DUP exercise a veto on the rest of Northern Ireland? They went backwards in the last election, Eamonn, if you remember. They came second.
Yeah, they're second to Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin, the biggest party in Ireland. But that's the whole point. This is what we're trying to say. They are worried about the writing on the wall. They're worried about Ireland heading towards unification.
Yes, of course.
So it's not just, we can talk about the economics of all of this and whatever it is, but basically, whether it's Boris or anybody else in Westminster, they're not really understanding, we don't believe that they understand the intricacies of what's going on in Ireland.
Look, the DUP wants to go back to a position where they are wholly part of the UK and no relation whatsoever with the EU, which effectively means a hard border re-established between Northern Ireland and the Republic. In other words, tearing up the Good Friday Agreement.
Do you see a scenario whereby Rishi Sunak pushes ahead with his deal with the European Union on the basis that, OK, it might not meet the red lines of the DUP, but actually they won't necessarily object to it, so they're not going to oppose it?
If the DUP think they can rustle up 100 Tory MPs to support them, they will hold fast to a very unmoving line. That's what they'll do. What Sunak should do is just face them all down. If necessary, get Labour Party, Lib Dems and everybody else to vote with him in the House of Commons and just say, this is what we're doing. I'm leading from the front. This is what's in the interest of the country. You can make up your own minds.
Okay. Norman, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting, the take on what has happened. Oh, no, listen, there's one, no, I do want to talk to you about this. It's about what news presenters wear, right? So there's a story today in the papers about about BBC, right? And an editor or something in the BBC says, hey, guys, look the way you look in the field. Look more sweaty and dirty.
I don't look sweaty in the field. Thank you very much.
No, I agree with you. I mean, they've all got those North Face zip-up jackets and everything. They've all got very good gear out in the field. But I think, what do you make of this, Norman? Basically saying, take your ties off for presenting news.
Well, I've got a tie on for a change, but I mean, let me say that, Eamonn and Isabel, you do not look ever dirty or sweaty. I think that's the way it should be. I think you should look professional on television if you're presenting a programme. And this is a ludicrous thing. This guy, Nadja, I don't know if it's a man or a woman actually, Nadja Nielsen, BBC News Director of Digital, saying that people who are looking sweaty and dirty are trusted more by the public. I don't think that's true.
I don't think it's true. And I think also that person is confusing a casual look or an informal look with a formal surrounding. You can't have, I mean, there's no one that has bigger theatre than the BBC News with all those big drums, boom, 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 the theme music and whatever, and then this massive set that they have to present. And I think that's too big a juxtaposition. Either have a casual set with casual clothes or a formal set with formal clothes.
Yes, that's right. And I think the fact is that this person is busy merging BBC World News and BBC News Channel. And frankly, should be more aware about the diminution of service that's coming from that than worry about what people are wearing.
Just finally, before we say goodbye, just seeing some of the lines coming out of this Putin speech. I mean, it's barefaced lies and propaganda. He's saying they started the war, we did everything to stop it.
I don't know who believes that.
Well,
even the Russians
perhaps a lot of Russians. Who knows? Norman Baker, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, time approaching. Well, it is exactly 9:15. So after the break, the actor and the author Davinia Taylor will be here telling you about what's called biohacking. Basically, it makes you very thin. If you want to lose weight, this is the transformation which you may well need after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on
Absolutely.
Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, you never guessed what was going on while we were away there, but we were trying to sort out Isabel's drink problem. Like you were away.
My mum watches this. Can you not say that?
All right, and my food problem and whatever. And the lady's going to do it is Davinia Taylor, who joins us now.
Good morning.
As a business owner, you may have recognised her from the TV, ex-Hollyoaks star and an author. You lost how much in terms of weight, Davinia? Not that I ever noticed you heavy, but you lost how much?
Well, it's about 3.5 stone, give or take. I mean, obviously, you've got water fluctuations, but yeah, I mean, I was seriously... What I didn't realise was I wasn't just, like, carrying excess fat. It was inflammation. So you can see I've got a before and after picture, and you can see my knees are inflamed. I couldn't fit my wedding ring on, and my doctors just said to me, oh, just have a calorie-controlled diet.
See, I believe I've got this inflammation.
You've got inflammation, you're inflamed. Yeah, I mean, it's literally... You're like a walking bruise.
My knees. I could show you my
You're walking
knees.
bruise. Get your legs out.
Sometimes I can't even bend them, they're so swollen.
This is it, because your body is like, you know, it's in distress. And I think my theory is we are being poisoned by little tiny ingredients that have kind of trickled down into our food chain and we're unaware of. So my biggest bugbear, I mean, we all know about sugar, highly addictive. I mean, I'm just tracking my glucose because this is like continuous glucose monitor, and I see what spikes my my glucose levels, because if you have constant spikes throughout the day, you get brain fog. We've all been talking about brain fog, but one of the secret ones, when I remove this ingredient from my diet as much as I possibly could, it was phenomenal. Brain fog went, cravings went, and that is vegetable oil, like sunflower oil and rapeseed oil, which are deemed heart healthy, and they are not. They are highly toxic. When you're making a spag bowl, for example, you're told not to use olive oil to cook your... Would you use rapeseed oil or something?
Absolutely not.
Nothing vegetable, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
none of that. It's highly, highly processed. It's very versatile, but what it does is it strips the gut of... Basically, it's a detergent.
So do you use butter?
I use butter, and I use, if I want to cook at high levels, avocado oil or lard.
So
Getting back to lard, yeah.
Vegetable oil is a total fabrication. It's totally false. There's no such thing as vegetable oil.
No.
Vegetables don't have oil.
No. I mean, it's really processed, and I mean, there's such misinformation about it being healthy for you that it's an unsaturated fat. But those fats are really toxic because I've got 4 boys, and they all play rugby and football, so I'm always using, it's like this product called the pink stuff, and it gets all the stains out. First ingredient in there is vegetable oil. Gosh. It's a detergent. It's like waterproof mascara remover. It literally strips the lining of your gut of mucus, and in that mucus is where your hormone receptors are to tell your brain you're satisfied. So as soon as you have, say, something like Pringles, I mean, they advertise it, once you pop, you can't stop, and it's true. You have that, you've got a subconscious message going to your brain saying, let's have another. Team that with a bit of salt, which actually is good in isolation. Team that with a bit of salt, bit of sugar, you are addicted and you're off. And then you're on the sort of gravy train. You're not going to stop eating.
So, sorry, go on.
No,
I've so much to ask.
Okay, well...
How did you become addicted to this? Like, this information? I mean, how do you start leading life and then say, right, I'm going to investigate all this?
Well, it just drove me mad, you know, because people are told to moderate. Everything in moderation. I mean, I can't moderate something that's highly addictive, and it's like sending my hormones, I'm seeking more and more. So I just thought I needed to get this information out there, and it's
it's quite underground, you know. I mean, I just wanted to put the information out there so people can make their own decisions, because cravings are the worst. It's the worst feeling in the world, thinking, oh, I just want more, I want more. And it takes over your brain, so you can't do any work. You're always looking at the clock. You're always wanting to nip to pret-a-manger, get another croissant. And it's constant. It gets in the way of productivity and energy. And like I've said to you in the break, brain fog is the pits. I hate feeling sluggish. I hate feeling lethargic. And that's exactly what our diet's doing to us.
So, I mean, you're not a doctor.
No.
So a lot of people are watching this going, OK, you sound very clued up on all of this, but you did do a DNA test to find out what you were essentially made of and what worked for you. What did you learn from that test, and how did that inform this journey that you're now?
Well, my journey started when my mum was diagnosed with cancer years ago. So she got breast cancer, and on the back of that, I did the usual sort of BRCA1 testing, and she sadly passed away. But on the back of that, I thought, well, what else can I find out about my genetics? What else have I inherited, you know? And ultimately, I'm an alcoholic by nature. I've not drank for like 14 years. But I wanted to know, I've no trauma in my life, what triggered that? And then I started looking at my liver's capability to detox, and I don't detox well at all. I'm missing like a SNP on my DNA, and it stops me producing a master antioxidant called glutathione, which some people do, you know, so I can't metabolize alcohol very well, so I get ferocious hangover, feel really fearful, feel terrible, which leads me to pick up another drink again. So that's, to me, was like, wow, so it's not my fault, it's not willpower, it's my actual genetics that are doing this to me. And it gave me some sort of like ease, and then I know how to hack around my genetics.
Well, we could talk to you all day. It's absolutely amazing. We're out of time, but
Davinia's book is It's Not a Diet,
And it's
the
not
No
a diet.
Cravings, No Willpower Way to Get Lean and Happy for Good. It's a Sunday Times bestseller. It's Not a Diet is the book. Davinia,
Correct.
thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed.
You're welcome.
Good mood food. You should get...
Shush, stop it.
Back in the morning from 6. See you then.
Bye.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Well, today we'll see some rain and some sunny spells around as well, but it'll be quite mild. But it's all change as we go through tonight and into the start of Wednesday, as this cold front will make its way south and eastwards through this evening and overnight, marking a change to something just a bit colder for the second half of this week. But back to the start of today, and it's quite a cloudy start for many out there this Tuesday morning. There might be